Greetings, non-human biologicals. I am Petey, the PDP 180. Okay, I'm done. I'm sorry. I forgot to turn on the voice modulator, but today we are doing an actual live stream. We're not doing robotics or anything like that. I mean, we did use AI to plan today's show, and since I created this stream last minute, I'm gonna go ahead and tweet it out. I'm gonna Twitter it out. I'm gonna go post it on the YouTube notification page or whatever they call it. And then we're going to proceed. Now, tonight we do have a special little project I'm going to share with you today. But I'm going to, of course, repeat myself when others join. So don't be surprised if anyone joins early and you hear me repeat myself. I want to make sure I kind of give everyone a brief or a recap. But in the meantime, I'm going to go and put my robotic assistant on the screen. Why? Pick my nose. I mean, clear some snot. Now, thank you, Petey. All right, his name is Petey. I posted a link. It doesn't look that nice. It just looks like a little link. I thought he was going to do like a nice post. Let's double check my community page. Posts. Yeah, that's not very enticing. Hopefully people see a thumbnail. Hey, what up, David Glenn? Good. We got someone intelligent in the chat. I can begin. So I got a cool ass project. So we're gonna pull up our friend ChatGPT, which I've never heard anyone call it that. I think I heard one guy claim it is Jippity, and I spoke to a friend who's smart like we are, and he's like, I've never heard anyone call it that. I'm like, me neither. I was like, you and me both. What up, Curtis? YZ Reacts. He's always got the wise puns. How you doing, Curtis? Good to see you. So we're gonna get back to the window here. What we're gonna do is we're gonna open up this left side panel, and I'm gonna look for a past conversation. But I don't want to do that. I want to open up a new window. New tab. So real quick, I want to share a couple of cool things I learned about ChatGPT. So a while back, I was using ChatGPT to assist with video encoding, and a friend had told me, oh, if you go to this section called Explore GPTs, you type in things like FFmpeg, or you can even see, like, recently I pulled up the MB Assistant. So that helped me to answer some questions about organizing my DVR recordings. Basically, I need to automatically re-encode them, apply some filter to them, and in that process, I would end up with a smaller file. And it would also just have some utility to it, most notably, the quality would be like the same as before, but we'd have a smaller file. But other things you could do, like I used FFmpeg GPT. That's how I was able to get even better knowledge on how to encode video files for that vintage handheld computing device. Although plain old ChatGPT was basically doing the same thing, this is presumably trained on the model, or the model is trained on the FFmpeg documentation. But we also have other ones like PC hardware troubleshooting. But one conversation I started was really cool, literally and figuratively. So I need to find if it's listed here. I think I did it under the troubleshooting category, yeah, because like I basically resumed a conversation I had with the AI assistant. And you know what? While we're here, let me turn on the YouTube chat. Luckily, that takes 2 seconds nowadays because we keep the settings kind of dialed in for that. And we can just easily, resize things and adjust them. And that's weird. Why is it the wrong size? Oh, maybe I got to click on something? Maybe I clicked on the wrong window? Yeah, none of those things are the thing I'm looking for. Is that it? I think that's it. Yeah, that's the one. So let me just do a quick test. I'm going to use my vote. Please resume. Please resume. Oh. Are we back? 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 Please tell me we're back. Oh, please tell me we're back. Are we back? Are we back? Are we back? I'm sorry, I'm really anxious. I hope we're back. All right, let me finish what I was. Oh, it's got to be that spectralizer. All right, let's get rid of that stupid spectralizer right now before I cause myself trouble. Sorry about that, kids. All right, there we go. So we have the chat over here. I'm just trying to make sure the chat doesn't have any like black lines on it. I think the chat window is fine because we're going to be doing some interesting stuff today. And I just want to make sure everything is perfect like Valentine's Day for you guys, you know? And, oh, you know what? Yeah, I know what happened. I hit undo in OBS. That'll do it every time. Right. Let's evaluate. Okay, everything looks basically good. Are we back? Is video back? Okay, good. Thank you, David. Okay, good. David says yes. Chat window is good too. Okay, yeah, I had to futz around with it, and OBS like literally exited on me, and I'm like, ah! And then I was like, okay, it's probably because I implemented that spectralizer plugin. So anyway, now let's get back on topic. Let me find, what was I looking for? All right, let's close this unnecessary window here. Hey, where's the Rumble chat? Okay, I think we lost the Rumble stream. We definitely lost the Rumble stream. Did we? No, we didn't. Okay, good. Thank you for your patience. All right, now where was I? I got to pull up that AI chat window again. Okay, here it is. Okay, good. We got chat. That's good. So anyway, I did some troubleshooting with this, but somewhere in here, did I do it in this conversation? I might have to go to a different conversation here. Okay, I asked it some questions about the i9 9900K. That's my CPU. Okay, good. We found it. This is the conversation. So I'm going to go to an earlier stage in the conversation. I'll explain my conundrum. In fact, I better pull up the spec sheet from Intel to further explain. So this is the AI conversation. We're going to just kind of glance at it. We're not really going to go exhaustively through the details, but I just want to show you the beginning of the question. And as you can see, it went back and forth last night, like at 5 a.m. or some craziness like that. And it runs pretty deep. And in fact, that's why we have a fish tank for today's thumbnail. So real quick, let me just pull up the spec sheet for the i9 9900K. That's the CPU in my computer. And then we'll take it from there. So first of all, okay, here we are. I noticed when testing a 5 gigahertz overclock, it worked and was stable, but the speed was forced to throttle down, rightfully so. Let's say I get one of the longer liquid cooling radiators. What sizes are standard? And so it gives me some info. So then I ask it like, well, what's a good example of a nice large one? So here's one right here, the Arctic Liquid Freezer 2, 420. 420. And this is not the one, is it? Nah, this is not it. No, that's definitely not it. Hang on. So I asked it for a big-ass radiator. Here it is, the Mora 3 420. Really, I guess it's the fan size. And this thing is cool. This is a beast. Look at that beautiful. Look at that thing. This is like a solid example. So it's almost the size of a small form factor tower. Main window is blurry. What main window? What's blurry? This is blurry. Please. I guess I could pull up my own video and check. I better do that. Because that's something, yeah, I'm not expecting that to be the case, but your display window is blurry. You mean like when I'm sharing my desktop? Display window, display window, display window. Display window. Which display? I know my thumbnail is blurry. I did rush through that. All of your OBS output is blurry. Okay, that's interesting. That is fucking weird. Let me check this out. I gotta pull this up. Where's my phone? I hope I didn't leave my phone somewhere else. Okay, well, my watch can't locate my phone right now. I probably don't need my phone, but it's just a matter of principle. Now that I'm questioning it. We're gonna get to the bottom of this. I think I have a hunch on what you're talking about. I'm gonna just pull up the YouTube video for now. Hey Google, where's my phone? Hey Google, stop. Hey Google, stop. Hey Google, I found it. Okay, there we go. Okay, let me try this again here. Oh, okay, first of all, the stupid spectralizer is back because I hit undo. So let's first of all get rid of that. Number 2, let's go and get myself back on camera. And number 3, then we will hopefully get back on topic without restarting the stream. I'm definitely trying to avoid restarting my own stream. All right, so the robot looks fine. But I'm going to go back to my desktop now. The quality is questionable. I see that. I'm going to just let it be. I'm going to start recording right now, and I'm going to let it be. So you mean like we just have high video compression? Is that kind of like what you guys are seeing? Quality looks like shit. You guys could try adjusting the quality on the settings button on the top right corner of the phone screen as a gear icon. And check if it's under advanced, if it's under 1080p or 720p. But it looks, it appears to be okay now. I think it's okay now. Yeah, I'll put the robot back on because that'll underscore. Now, the robot looks like shit regardless, so I'm not surprised if it looks a little bit off. Ha, fucking shoe on head. Okay, so it's probably just adjusting. You guys could probably adjust it on your end, but yeah, it does do that. Sometimes it'll compensate. Probably because I had 2 streams trying to go out, or I had like one OBS crash on me, and I reopened OBS, and OBS was all like, "Oh, OBS is already running," and I said open anyway because I didn't really have time to wait. Because when you're doing a live stream, you have like a limited window to reopen OBS without doing everything over again, and I really didn't want to do everything over again. So that's where I'm at right now. So I'm comfortable with what I see on my screen. I'll keep monitoring my phone screen for the meantime, and I'll explain what we're looking at. But I do appreciate all of your feedback. And if you're watching on a computer, I can show you how to adjust the resolution there. It's very similar to this. So if you're looking at this window on the left side here, there's a gear icon. And basically, you're clicking on something like this. So on the phone, when you click on the gear icon, you got to click on a button that says advanced. And then you can mess around with that. After the night I've had debugging my system, yeah, I can imagine. All right, so bottom line is, yeah, big fat juicy radiator. Okay, it's not juicy. Well, I guess it is juicy. It's got liquid inside of it. So look at that big fat radiator, guys. There's a radiator behind those fans, and you circulate the liquid. So essentially, in liquid cooling, you have like a what they call a water block, and it's sort of like in place of putting a heat sink and a fan on top of your CPU. You're putting something that is hollow or somewhat hollow, or at least a block of aluminum or copper or some combination thereof. Maybe it has like a zigzag in there. Maybe it just has a chamber to let liquid flow. But the whole idea of it is that you're going to have metal contacting the top of your CPU. The heat is going to be conducted through that metal. And then any liquid that is being circulated through that block, because there's essentially an ingoing and outgoing tube. That makes sense, David. It's going to essentially, allow the liquid to absorb heat, and then you circulate that hot liquid to a radiator that you can have inside your computer. This is why a lot of modern computer cases don't have front bays. Like, let's look at a picture of a modern computer case. So, modern computer case front bays, like they all have this lame design. I mean, I guess it's not lame depending on what you're trying to do with it. I think it's dumb. But I can empathize with people who couldn't care less about having a front device. And what you'll notice in any of these pictures, even this absolutely low resolution image that's not very useful at all. And hello, California Ford 44. It's good to see you. It is lovely seeing you here today. It is the first day of spring. Oh, well, that explains why it's hot. Well, it's not hot yet, but in fact, that's why we're doing this topic today, because as we enter the warmer summer months, this is going to become a larger concern, and I'll explain as I go along. Hey, what up, KSVU728? This may or may not be of interest to you as well, depending on how hot your computer gets during the summertime and how it impacts your ability to run a live stream. Me personally, well, we'll get to that in a moment. And hello, James. Thank you also for, troubleshooting. Yeah. Put it to whatever resolution you can sustain, obviously, right? 720 should be plenty good. Damn it, you didn't hear anything I said. I was just saying that shoe on head. I think she's one of those libertarian socialists, which normally I have a problem with them because like it's an oxymoron. But I think she reasons her position well enough that I'm okay with it. You know what I mean? Like I mean, like I may not agree, but I respect it, and I think we do need some dissent in people who are able to say agreeable things. We do need them to be able to say some disagreeable things sometimes. So yeah, like modern computer case. This one here is more of a stylish one, but the point is there's no place for the front 5.25-inch bays. And one of the reasons you might leave this front space empty is so you can put a radiator. Now, in this case, the radiator is at the top. And in theory, the top of my computer case can indeed accommodate a radiator up there. But if I want the larger radiator, I do have like openings in the back where you could run pipes or tubes, flexible tubing, and you could have a larger external liquid cooled radiator like the one you saw. Although this picture kind of shows you like, well, it doesn't really show you the water block that closely. So now let me see if I get one more picture here. I want to get one that looks more like a conventional computer case, but not quite. Okay, so there's one right there. Once again, we got 3 fans in the front, nowhere to put a disc. And this would be an area that you sometimes might put a radiator, or you like if you have a bigger radiator, you can put it here. If you don't have a large radiator, you might put it in the top. Either way, you can have your fans pulling air and pushing it in, and then you have your exhaust fan, and you got some fan pushing up perhaps. This one here is actually more conventional looking, as you can see. So now let's see what Intel recommends as stock cooling for i9-9900K, because I'm going to guarantee you it's going to be a funny. Some have wasted space in the power supply area. A bay or two could be fitted. Ah, yeah, that's true. It's a weird place, though, in the back of the computer. I mean, if you could put a hard drive there, that makes sense. And I've seen designs where they literally do have a place for you to, like, screw in or slide in a hard drive in that neighborhood. That's interesting. And maybe if you have an exotic design where the power supply is in the front. Actually, might be dealing with overheating. You might have to change. I don't know if you have an all-in-one cooler, but it's my understanding. I'm not an expert on liquid cooling that. But it's my understanding some people, they change the liquid like every year. Unicorn vomit, RGB everywhere. How to say I'm a crackhead without stems everywhere. Mine has 3 in the front, 3 on the top, yep. And 1 in the back, and then there's 2 in the graphics card. Yep, that makes sense. That's pretty standard. And so in the design I'm about to show you guys, I'm going to continue air cooling the graphics card, but if it's successful, there will be an opportunity to connect that to the liquid circuit, the liquid loop, as well as they call it, the cooling loop, water loop. Now, some people call it water cooling, some people call it liquid cooling. Now, if you're putting a coolant in there that's not water, is it liquid? Is it water cooling? Not necessarily, but actually yes, because usually you might be mixing a biocide with the liquid, something that prevents microbes from growing inside that water, for example, preventing slime buildup. Some people might put some kind of antifreeze-like liquid that mixes with water. So in one of the recommendations I read, they suggested using distilled water. I'm like, I'm going to need 50 gallons of distilled water? Hell no. New York tap water will have to suffice. And apparently if I mix it with biocide, it's a non-issue. So apparently like some of the heat sinks that you might put or pair with an Intel i9 might look something like this. I hope to God this is not what they're including with the i9 9900K. Okay, I'm you know, like this would be more like what you want. You want a radiator tower, and this is what I have. This is literally what I have right now. Now, I only have one fan on it, but I could install a second fan so that we have a push-to-pull configuration. So you're pushing, the inside fan is pulling from the middle, and it's also pushing through here. They also have designs where you only have one radiator tower instead of the dual radiator tower you see here. Like this one here, let's say, it's a crappy, a simpler one, but in this scenario, you might put a fan on both sides, which doesn't really add a great deal of extra cooling performance. Having a second radiator adds a lot more cooling performance. Having two radiators with their own fans adds more cooling performance. But putting two fans on a single radiator, not really that great. So yeah, radiator towers are not bad. But last week I did an experiment. I used Grok to assist me with overclocking my computer, and it did a pretty good job. It educated me on the key things like what settings I'm changing, why and how, and what they impact. The main thing was that once I had the CPU running at 5 gigahertz, we had a, wait, is my microphone still muted? It's not muted anymore, right? What opinion? Some have voice, oh yeah, well, no, it's true. You know, it's just not, to me, it's just not a place I don't want to reach around my computer and do that shit. But if it's a hard drive, yeah, by all means, I think it makes a lot of sense. For CD, DVD, Blu-ray drives, I personally don't think it makes sense, but you know, maybe there's a case where you don't use your Blu-ray drive a lot, but you still need to have one available. You know, it could be an interesting idea. Cool. Thank you for confirming. I got confused for a minute there, Dave. So let's get to like some scenarios here. Okay, I got my CPU, and I need to open up core temperature, and I need to find the core temperature window. I lost the core temperature window. Here it is. And we need to find the CPU-Z window, which if you were Canadian, you'd be calling it CPU-Z. But luckily, I am not Canadian. Although there's nothing wrong with being Canadian. We got good Canadians in our corner of YouTube. And Kick and the other one. Yeah, that's true. So anyway, we've got a couple of application windows here. And no camera. Let's put the camera on. All right, so Task Manager is running now. If I was to run a video encoder right now, which I'm afraid to do, but maybe I'll do it anyway. Should I do it? Let's do it. Let's do it. We're going to do it. We're going to do it. You know how I'm going to do it? You're going to love this. All right. We're going to, I'm going to move some video files into a directory where the computer has to work on them. So I have a script over here. And when I do this command here, it's going to take... Did I do a copy and paste? I hope I did a copy and paste. Okay, I did a copy and paste. I don't know if I copied the right file. I didn't copy all the right files, but that's all right. This will do the trick. So over here, the CPU is now at 100% use. And you can see that more or less over here. Okay, I usually update it slowly. Now, I actually capped my CPU speed at 3.8-ish or 3.7 gigahertz because when I overclocked the 5 gigahertz, it kicked off so much heat that these temperatures would hit 190, 200 degrees instantly, and then the CPU would have to throttle down. So it couldn't really sustain 5 gigahertz. Ultimately, I found that it would always like go to 4.7 gigahertz at the most. And even then, when I manually lowered the speed and I capped it at 4.7, I found out it was still getting too hot and it wasn't able to consistently maintain the temperature, you know, at reasonable temperature. So my idea was just keep manually. Okay, now we're at 0 gigahertz. So that was funny. You saw that forced reading. It literally says 0 gigahertz. But essentially, my idea was to cap the top CPU clock speed until I reached equilibrium. Now, I don't know why right now it's doing such a good job staying cool, but this is sort of what I was targeting last night. And, you know, it's around 180. That's great. The minute it gets to 194, these numbers turn orange. That's sort of like a warning temperature. This CPU does have the ability to run individual cores or pairs of cores or so at like 5 gigahertz without the rest going that high. But essentially by design, if we look at the spec sheet, it'll say that the i9 9900K does a max turbo of 5 gigahertz. Not necessarily. I don't know why they're telling us that here unless they're talking about turbo boost. But the base frequency is 3.6 gigahertz. And so what that means is that at that level, it never overheats. But the minute you're doing something that is more demanding, it can, engage the turbo speed for, short bursts and as long as cooling of your system allows. So having better cooling, could yield, of course, better cooling before. I mean, having better cooling could mean that you can operate at turbo speeds, turbo clock frequencies, as they're called, for a longer period of time. So that's the gist of it. Now, let me see here. What am I missing? Well, there are a couple ways you can control the power level. One of them is to open up the power plan settings. So over here in my start menu, I said open up the power plan settings. So if we go to the left side of my left monitor, you'll see here I have this little window, and you can sometimes find yourself using this on a laptop. But essentially, I have balanced mode, high performance mode, high performance Z, which don't worry about it. But basically, balanced mode, high performance, and power saver. So I'm going to bring that to my right monitor. And I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to show you what happens when I kick into power saver mode. My clock speed is going to instantly go down to 3.2 apparently. And what governs... Oh, no, 1.3. Good. It's doing what I want it to do. The instant I did that, my fan started getting quieter. And if we go to the settings window here, we're going to get a little more detail that's going to elucidate what's going on here. So processor power management, minimum, maximum. So bottom line is the maximum number here dictates how high my clock speed goes. So we're at 1.5 right now. What happens if I apply 60% instead of 40%? Okay, 1.37. Now it went to 1.76. Now bear in mind the Windows number here may not be as accurate as the number we see here, but basically it's 2.09 or 2.1 gigahertz, 2.099. So basically 2.1 gigahertz. And one of the things you'll see here is a number here. So 99 times 21. 21 is the clock multiplier. So when you're overclocking, you're going to basically be setting that to a higher number alongside other settings. And when it gets hot, it will lower the clock multiplier, this number here. Now, if I can cap the power manually by typing numbers in here, you might say, well, Ron, well, I don't know if you might say it, but I said to myself, Ron, why don't you go into balanced mode and just set it to 99%? So let's see what happens when we do that. Okay, we'll show you. I'm going to show you that it's set to 99%. It keeps opening the window on my top monitor. That's funny. Now the computer is getting a little louder, but not too loud. There we go, 99%. So remember, the CPU could go up to right now 3.7 gigahertz with my current settings, 4.6 or 4.7 gigahertz with like normal turbo, and 5 when you're overclocking it. Even though the spec sheet seems to be saying it a little bit differently. So I think what they're saying is in the spec sheet is that it'll do 5 gigahertz max turbo on 2 cores. Not every core. So it's a little deceptive. But the most deceptive thing, that's the point. The most deceptive thing here is this number right over here. TDP, thermal design power. They're saying that to people who don't know any better, when you're buying a cooling device for your CPU, get one that's compatible and get one rated for 95 watts. So people are thinking, oh, okay, yeah, I got this really power efficient CPU that runs at 95 watts and it can do all this cool shit. I mean, and so they buy a cooling device rated for 95 watts, or they buy a computer from Dell. And Dell puts like a little tiny, comparatively small heatsink, small compared to what I showed you a moment ago that I'm using now, the double radiator tower. And basically, yeah, it'll run reliably at 95 watts, but then when it does turbo, it can only do it for a very, very short burst. So if you're doing like a long video encoding job, if you're doing video editing and you're exporting a video, then I got news for you. If you're playing a game while streaming and you need that extra little overhead, you're not going to be able to really tap it, especially during the summertime. So here's the interesting thing. When you set this to 99%, it's not 99% of the speed you saw earlier. What was it, 3.7? It's 99% of 3.6 or something like that. I forget the number exactly. But basically, it's 3.6 minus 1%. And that apparently is 3.49 or, yeah, it's about 3.5 gigahertz according to this, which I feel like there's something wrong with the mathematics on that one, but I think I'm just going to stick with the numbers there. But let's see here, 3.60 gigahertz minus 1 percentile. Yeah, it's about 3.56, 3.5, so it's about right. So in other words, I can't manage the speed between 3.6 and 5 gigahertz. I can only tell it to use 1% less than 3.6. I can't tell it to go like using, at least not with this setting. I can't tell it to like use anything like, because the minute I pick 100%, it's not getting 100% faster. It's getting like a little faster than 1%. It's quite a bit faster. I mean, it's, oops, sorry about that. My arm was getting cut off when I was waving my hand, so I was trying to see if I could fix that. Anyway. I gotta expand that video box somehow. Oh, come on. There we go. Okay, good. That'll do. So, yeah. Bottom line is that how do you control it? Well, basically, the same settings that you use for overclocking allow you to do that. So, now, once I realized that, I was able to go back to the BIOS settings, which is how you would do it. You'd have to get into the system settings or the BIOS. You know, like, an easiest way is when you reboot Windows 10, you hold down Shift while clicking the restart button, and then it'll give you a menu so that you don't have to go and hit F2 when you turn on your computer. That timing could be really tricky when you try to enter the setup that way, but if you have to do it that way, absolutely. And basically, I was able to tweak the turbo settings or how it uses the turbo, and that's how I've been able to accomplish being able to have good direct granular control. And I use this on my backyard PC for my telescope to keep it cool during the summer, but obviously, I don't want to be aggressively capping my clock speed on my CPU. I mean, if you look here, well, it doesn't show you now because we're not doing video encoding anymore. But bottom line is that, yeah, I don't like that. So instead, not only do I not want to cap it, I want to be able to run at either 4.6, maybe 5 gigahertz, somewhat close to continuously, you know. And whatever the number is, I know I can do better than 3.7 gigahertz continuous turbo while keeping it cool. But how? Well, we're going to get to that in a second. And first, I'll get back to the chat. Yeah, like, well, no, more like 90 watts versus 150 watts. See how deceptive that is? Like, if it's a 10-watt difference, like, that would be fine. Well, we have turbo buttons, basically. And we probably could bring the turbo button back, actually. Based on what we're looking at now, we could very well bring it back. I can make a turbo button for my Stream Deck, potentially. You know, if I want to use the command line to, like, do what we were just doing with the power plan. 79%, I don't know what that does. But it would be 79% of 3.6. Not 79% of 3.5. So that's why using that input is not really ideal for being able to... It's not even possible to adjust your turbo that way. Oops, I'm sorry, the chat was over there. Oops. What up, Still Cruz 119? Good to see you. Hello, Stephanie Cruz. We're doing some nerd stuff today. We're talking about liquid cooling. Yep. Yeah, I have a tunnel for my power supply. I know what you're talking about. Actually, on the front of my case, there's 4 hard drives in RAID 10, and then that same compartment pushes the air through the hard drives and into the power supply because it's all in the same compartment. And there's even a middle slot for a fan. So if I want to remove the front case fan so that I can reduce the noise level, I can do that. And that might be something I do because I kind of like the idea, especially if I make the fans noisier in my computer at some future point in time, that would be one way to mitigate that. But the solution I have in mind today, I guess I should unveil my solution because it's pretty cool. But you see the problem here. And you could buy liquid cooling. You could buy this big radiator here. You could buy smaller radiators that fit in the computer. You could buy what they call an all-in-one cooler where, you know, essentially it's a pre-made solution, but essentially some of them aren't designed to be serviced. So you have to replace them after some time if the liquid gets all gunked up or galvanic corrosion happens on the inside. So let's go back to the AI conversation real quick. So it's giving me some ideas. So finally I go, okay, this is cool. But the problem is that if I have a radiator in the room, just like the one we're looking at here, it's going to put the heat into the environment in the room. You know, and so during the summertime, it might keep the computer cool enough to run at a higher speed, but it can't break the laws of physics. And the room's going to get hot. The air conditioner is still going to have to fight that heat, which may be enough in some cases. And real quick side note, yes, it did cross my mind to just put a dryer vent in front of the air conditioner and run it to the top of my computer case because the location of that radiator tower is perfect. If you plug a dryer vent into the top of my computer, I could reverse one of my fans and it would be directing airflow directly in front of the CPU and I wouldn't even need to put a duct But if I put an internal duct in there, I can direct that cold air through the case. But this still means we're putting the heat into the environment of the room. And there's other solutions, but let's talk about that. So liquid cooling. So we could hang that radiator out the window, but then I'd have to drill holes in the wall or figure out where I can push tubing to the side of the air conditioner, because that's probably a point of egress. Keep the casement window open with some kind of like flap for a dryer vent. They got these little mounting brackets. Another solution I saw was where you put a flower pot outside the window full of water, and you can take it a step further. You can not only immerse a radiator in that water, but you can also have like water spraying on top of the radiator, and essentially it's a form of evaporative cooling. So whether you're circulating copper pipes and you have little fins on top of it, there's a method that makes it work a lot like a cooling tower at a large scale power plant. But I want to avoid that, so then I had a brainstorm. I have a 50-gallon aquarium, so let's look at the AI conversation I had once again and see at which point I exchanged this bright idea. Okay, we're just going to let it scroll. Final thoughts. Okay, so I said, let's say I was to stick that large radiator. Let's say that radiator was placed into a 50-gallon aquarium with room temperature water. And it goes, place an MORA3 420 millimeter radiator inside a 50-gallon aquarium filled with room temperature water is an interesting concept that could lead to extremely efficient passive cooling under the right conditions. Let's break down how this would work. That's a good point too, James. You could dry your laundry with your PC if you take the other tube and you run it over the laundry. That's actually cool. And that would also potentially cool the air down. The act of evaporating the water off the clothes is sort of like when people hang towels between doorways back in the old days. If it's hot and dry and you hang towels, wet towels in the doorway and the wind is blowing through it, it works just like a swamp cooler. The problem is that that form of cooling becomes drastically ineffectual when it's humid, because if the air is already saturated with moisture, then there's no more capacity for that additional moisture. And on top of that, you're just making the room kind of muggier, and you don't necessarily want to be in a muggy environment now, right? But that's a good one, James. My CPU cooler has some liquid inside. Yep, that's a good. That's good. Actually, we can take a look at that idea in a second. My CPU cooler has some liquid inside the tubes, but it looks like a regular CPU cooler. Expected, it's pretty big. I think I need to put new thermal paste on. Yeah, I think so. I looked into my NVIDIA Quadro using the same tech troubleshooting GPT, and apparently it may not be the cooling. I may not need to put my NVIDIA Quadro in the oven. It may be that I was overburdening my PCI Express bus. But anyway, real quick, I'm glad you brought that up, because we should take a look at that. Vapor chamber copper pipe cooling. So what you're talking about, if I understand correctly, and I'm pretty sure we're on a similar page, and this may not be exactly what you have, but the concept is similar. They do this in laptops. They flatten the pipes out in laptops, a lot like what you're seeing here. Now, yes, copper conducts heat, but that's not what's going on here. It's not just copper conducting heat. In fact, if you were to drill a hole through this, it would become drastically ineffective, or ineffectual. I just started using that word a minute ago. But jokes aside, let me see if this actually shows us. So I'm assuming this is the copper heat pipes cross section here. I think that's what we're looking at. Is it? You know something? I need something that looks a little bit more normal. You know what? Let's do copper heat pipe. Let's not make up fancy words. In fact, this picture is really good. We're going to get that picture there. And yep, and see it's circling back to the picture that I just clicked on, because it's actually a good picture. See, we're not looking just for a vapor chamber. We are looking for a heat pipe. Oh, I see. I misspoke it. Heat pipe, water, air cool. All right. Okay, good. We're getting a little warmer here, guys. Hang in there. Okay, good. This is a good example. But essentially, all of these copper pipes here work on this basic principle. So, essentially, The hot side of the pipe, I know this is a big fat pipe, but imagine it's a long skinny pipe. This side here is the part that you have your fan on. So these are these little fins are the heat sinks, and the air's blowing over it. And I know that's not what this diagram is saying, but that's what I'm going to say it is right now. On this side, this is the part that touches your CPU. And when they seal up these pipes in the factory, they put a drop of water in it, like a very small drop of water. It's barely enough water to like fill the thing at all. But what happens is there's like essentially similar to the refrigeration cycle. The hot CPU heats up that water, thereby turning it into vapor. The vapor has this tendency to go to the cold side because on this side here, there's a fan blowing air over the radiator, fins, the heat sink fins. And so this side gets colder. And of course, you know what happens to, moisture-laden air, vapor-laden air when it, is near a cold surface, like a soda can. It gets, moisture buildup. It gets condensation. So once that condensation happens, the liquid ultimately finds its way back to the other side where the heat is. It once again gets evaporated, gets cooled down, liquefies, go back, and you get the idea. And it's just a friendly cycle of this happening. I know these are grossly oversimplified examples. I wish we had like a little bit more of a, real example perhaps. But it is actually a valid simplification of what's going on in that design. Any questions? Welcome, Mr. Cruz. Welcome, Hey, it's Slim Nim. I see you, buddy. Oh yeah, I did say hi. I don't know if I said hi, but Slim Nim mentioned the turbo button. I have a Cooler Master. Oh yeah, I have an even cooler Master. What say you? No, but jokes aside, I have a Cooler Master that I used to use on my 8-core AMD FX 8350 before it took a drink in the rain. Speaking of rain, let's see if I can log into my backyard PC right now. Yes, I can. Okay, good. There's nothing broken. Whew, that's good. Hope the telescope isn't... Okay, good. The telescope is parked. Let's close the software real quick. Now, this actually is really handy because this is one way I can keep my living space cool. Okay, let's get out of this for now. By running video encoding on an outdoor PC. Okay, so... I want to show that to you guys in a minute. Let's make sure there's no questions. Yeah, just a few drops. It might be alcohol. It might be water mixed with alcohol. It might be something with a biocide, or it might be distilled water. But I believe they do just use water in some form. Maybe it's deionized water, Can I drunk my PC in a vat? Oh, I just misread that. Can I? Actually, that's a great question. That's a great question, Stephanie. It's a very good question. I'm not even kidding. Because why is it a great question? It gives me an excuse to do something cool. Cray supercomputer immersion cooling. So you can't necessarily immerse it in water unless you are using, I think, either distilled or deionized water. But that's assuming everything is clean. Now, my concern is that once impurities build up into that water, if they build up, the water will become conductive, and then you got a problem. Also, I just don't know what the consequences are of long-term immersion of components in water. But it is an interesting idea, Stephanie. Some people use mineral oil. Now, mineral oil immersion is a problem because apparently some mineral oil immersion cooling, it works because mineral oil will not conduct electricity. It doesn't really work because mineral oil is freaking like really greasy stuff. I mean, like this is the stuff, like this is very clean mineral oil, yes. But this is basically the stuff you put in your brakes. And if you ever get like mineral oil on anything, it's just like kind of messy. Like you get it on your brake rotors. Well, like if I do my brakes on my bike, I get it on the rotors, I have problems, But yeah, people put motherboards in fish tanks, and I believe they use the fans to sort of move the mineral oil around. I don't know how long that lasts, if that even lasts, but there's different tricks you can do. This guy's got a smart design. He's got radiators sort of circulating mineral oil, so the mineral oil absorbs the heat. They pump it through this, and then this blows the stuff. So you're just moving heat from one place to another. It's a valid solution, but it can be kind of troublesome, right? Now, the water, there's other solutions, but I have a better solution for you, Stephanie. If you want to spend like, I don't know, $200 to $2,000, I'll show you a cool picture. Let's see. Let me just get my sound level. Let me just get the sound ready for you guys, all right? Hopefully we can share desktop audio here, right? So let me just mute my microphone. Damn it, I was on mute. As I was saying, the wires are running along the middle. The signal has to run along the shortest path in the middle, where the signal can have the lowest latency. Yes, I plugged the Game Boy in 27 hours ago, and I'm sure by now the battery is nicely cooked, and I can test it out. Good to see you, Real Wade Nation Gaming. And it's also good to see DJ Play Nice. Salute to you. I was thinking about getting a Trix Panorama 240 AIO, and that's probably fine. Because really, it's just a matter of like the fact that you can have a larger radiator by using liquid cooling. Because normally you can only fit as big of an air cooling device as your case can accommodate. But with liquid cooling, you can often like shove a radiator in a different corner, or you can even have one that's externally mounted. Maybe I'll take a look at that in a little while. But for now, what's up, Pop Culture Mechanic? Hey, industrial co-processors. Oh, co-processors. Let me say that again. Industrial compressors will be oil cooled as long as you have a big enough heat exchanger. It works nicely. Ah, interesting. Yeah, and I was learning about that too. When I wanted to get a picture. Am I muted now? I'm not muted now. Okay, good. I wanted to get a picture of the inside of a car radiator, and I did. I found one, and I saw the part where it cools the transmission fluid. That was kind of interesting. We're not muted anymore, right? We were muted, though. I have $11 in my wallet. I don't think I could buy that stuff. Oh, come on. You could always do a bank heist. Jokes aside, Stephanie, I get you. But let's take a look at this exotic setup anyway. This better not be an AI generated video. Oh, I have one of these. Wait, which one do I have? No, I don't have any of these. I have a system. Oh, I have that one. I have the one in the middle. I have this one. I have a older version of this one here, the green one. A beautiful case. Look at these are sexy. Look how nice they are. These are the Silicon Graphics workstations. I don't even know what I'm watching right now.
And this is the machine that I.
Okay, this guy's giving a navigation.
Be able to own one of the other.
And this is not what I was looking for. I was hoping this guy would steal the video from NASA.
The upper part of each.
But you get the idea. You can see the inside now. All these are immersed in a liquid. That 3M cells. You can literally look up the liquid. It's called 3M fluorine.
320 contain.
And 3M fluorine is inert to. That's either mineral oil or fluorinert. That might be fluorinert. 3M fluorinert is non-conductive, and they use it a lot in phase change cooling applications. You can see in this computer here, you have a lot of density. Now, even though it's like not really a microprocessor, it's using integrated circuits that are strung together to behave like a processor, because it's a large processor. And they ran the liquid fluorinert in between these boards, because if you have this level of density with the amount of power that this is drawing, there's really no other way to cool it down. Like air cooling will not cut it. The first Cray supercomputer used, believe it or not, what's that?
To higher speeds.
Cray.
Traditionally, the trade-off was lower reliability due to increased operating temperatures.
So there's a video from NASA. That's what we want to see. Okay, here it is, guys. It's got some nice 80s music. You guys have sound on this? I hope you have sound on this. That's funny. That's cool.
When aeronautical engineers want to know how air will flow over one of their designs, they can build a model and test it in a wind tunnel. Less time.
Okay, so here's the Cray 1 supercomputer. This is the one that used Freon.
But thanks to today's supercomputer.
And the guy who built it basically had to learn how refrigerators worked to build it. It's like around 1978 this was designed. The bottom has power supplies and refrigeration equipment. The rest of it are circuits, the components, the boards, and the sandwich between plates of copper, basically, that
like
allowed Freon to be
circular. There's a less costly, less time-consuming way to evaluate
and you see you got like a terminal here hooked up to a VAX, which is a VAX 11780. It's basically, or is that a PDP-10? I think it's a VAX 11780, but for this to work, you'd have like the first model, you'd have like two PDP-8 mini computers hooked up to it because you needed like something that would feed the data to the CPU. And then you'd have essentially two terminal consoles. You know, you wouldn't have one command line. You'd have like three of them in total, from what I understand.
These
And if you emulate it, that's what you end up seeing. I've never emulated it, but I've seen videos. Now, this is the Cray 2. Notice the Cray 2 is much smaller than the Cray 1. While the first one used refrigerant, that, I gotta flip that. 11 at the blackjack tables. Yeah, baby. Yeah, right. It's pretty cool. Use that 11 to create the Ocean's 11 team. Ooh, they each got $1 to pull off a heist. And then bingo, bango, payday. Old Cray supercomputers were the round one. Yep. This is among them. So basically, let us see. They have different variations of it. Cray designed machines for Control Data Corporation before that. There's a great talk that he gives that you can find. Seymour Cray giving like one of his last talks while the Cray 3 supercomputer was being tested, and before he got killed or got into a car. I think he got into a car accident. He was driving a Jeep that wasn't safe. He might have been driving one of those military Jeeps with the steering wheel that, like, you know, impales you. So it may not have been conspiracy theory, but there were people who believed it, like, had a crazy, I don't know if it's a crazy conspiracy theory, but if you can't back it, you know. So anyway, let's keep going. So those are actually similar to the cables. If you were to rip open a solid copper core Ethernet cable or maybe braided strand, you'd get something like that.
Generation Cray, it's faster than any computer in the world.
While you crawling to bed, some poor lady had to crawl inside that computer. I'm not even kidding. They had to hire really small women to work on that shit. But I hope you get the replay. I'll try to. Oh, wait, David Glenn, are you in bed yet? I hope you're not in bed yet. I'll show you I'm going to give you the point. I'm going to give you the conclusion right now. I hope you're still here. So bottom line is I want to hook my computer up to this shit. So this is my computer. Those are the ports on the back where I'm going to hook the tubes up. Ultimately, we're going to have the liquid coming out of the computer, hot liquid, going into copper pipes. The copper pipe is going to form a zigzag or a loop or a circle or a spiral in this fish tank. Then the water, now cooled because the liquid has circulated through the fish tank that has warmed up by absorbing the heat, will be cooled down. It'll go back in my computer and it'll repeat the cycle. And then this is a chiller, which I will get into greater detail later. And this is a fan. But that is, in conclusion, if you're still here, David Glenn, that is how this is going to work in a nutshell. And we'll go into greater detail for the rest of the show on that. But anyway, I want to thank David Glenn for dropping in, doing the mod things, and just being here. And everyone wish David a good night. And pleasant dreams. Perhaps lucid dreams. We were talking about lucid dreaming at Slim Nims last night. It was interesting. You know it. Greetings, Professor Falcon. All right. So anyway, now that I gave the quick recap, I'll slow it down again. So now the water, believe it or not, according to the AI, has a ability to absorb a fair amount of heat. Not indefinitely. Putting a fan over it will help, but then presumably you're going to either add moisture or heat to the room anyway. But it acts as a buffer. So while every other cooling solution, including liquid cooling solutions, typically are still going to have to pass that heat into the air of the room, this solution sort of like buffers the air. So maybe it gives your air conditioner time to catch up, so to speak. Now, the fan over the water would be like more like the initial setup. Ultimately, I would buy an aquarium chiller. And an aquarium chiller is basically something that you circulate water from your aquarium into. It cools it down like a refrigerator would because it's using the same technology as a refrigerator, which is among one of the more efficient ways to, cool things down. Like compared to what my telescope uses, I use a thermoelectric cooling device. Oh, thank you, Stephanie. I appreciate that. It's very sweet. So I'll give you an example of what my telescope uses. In particular, the camera in my telescope uses something like this. And basically, if you apply 12 volts of electrical current to this, one side gets hot, one side gets cold. But the problem is that the hot side has to be cooled down with a fan. And if the hot side doesn't get cooled down, then the cold side stops getting cold. But if you can cool down the hot side enough, the cold side will literally become ice. Well, it'll, attract moisture, it'll condense. So thermoelectric coolers are pretty cool in this case, the way the person cooled it down was by hooking a pump, or they're selling a product that you can hook up to it. But the problem is that while this can be a method to cool down the water in that aquarium, the amount of waste heat this thing will dump will be ludicrous. Now, maybe if I hang the radiator out the window, maybe I have a dying chance of working it out. Something like this would be extremely efficient in the winter, though, or at least it would be extremely effective in the winter to the point that you'd have to have a thermostat to turn it off periodically to prevent you from freezing the fish tank. But yeah, thermoelectric cooler is not efficient. Basically, like, whether you're using a refrigerator or a thermoelectric cooler, essentially you're consuming electricity to move heat from one place to another place, thereby making the inside place cold. But the problem is, with the thermoelectric cooler, in addition to the heat that it removes from whatever you're trying to cool down, it puts out a crap ton more heat, like a lot more. And refrigerators do something similar, but in the mathematics, according to Mr. AI, this aquarium chiller would only dump about 150 watts of extra heat. And I'm okay with that, especially knowing that this is going to act as a buffer and yada, yada, yada. I'm quite comfortable with that. So that's the gist of it. So round one is going to be just the water and maybe a fan or fans. Round two will be more thorough, where we add the chiller to the water. The water could probably just be New York tap water, especially if I plan on changing it from time to time. I intend on sticking with New York tap water, maybe adding a little biocide to it or something appropriate that prevents microbial, life from forming. Let's go back to the video here.
250 million calculations per second. It also has...
Okay, now I want you to pay attention here. I know this is a low quality video, but we're going to see bubbles in this computer from the top window.
Any existing machine. In fact, the Cray...
I love how the lady's like walking up looking at it. Like, nobody would ever look. I mean, I guess if I worked in a place that had this computer, yes, I guess I would walk up to it, admire it. But there's definitely no reason to really look at it unless you're troubleshooting, or maybe I guess the lights might mean something.
Circuitry
anyway,
is continually immersed in a cooling solution.
But in that picture right there, you can barely see. Okay, I see it, the bubbles right over here. Observe in this region here. You're gonna see bubbles forming. I'll rewind it 3 times for you guys.
In fact, the Cray 2 is so powerful that its circuitry is continually immersed in a cooling solution to keep it from overheating. Putting this new
and then it runs through that waterfall, which appears to be some kind of heat exchanger. I don't think it's just for style, but it looks like it's for style. And presumably you could like either hook it up to air conditioning or some kind of cold water chiller perhaps, or maybe even have an air, flow going over it in an air conditioned data center. And then the liquid would return to the computer. So this is cool, but the problem with this method of cooling a computer down is, if you look at the price, let me see, is there any more pictures here? Let's see, just some old guy talking about, he's not old, but, some guy.
Yeah, equivalent to a warehouse.
This guy's like, oh yeah, we got this thing, we could do space stuff.
But the orbiter attached to the
and then they're like, a space shuttle, and wind tunnels,
program.
and more wind tunnels.
Supercomputer.
And it's super. Thanks for asking.
In air and spacecraft
Let me get
design.
a 3. Oh, and here's the guy. Is that him? Yep, I found it. What's all of this about gallium arsenide? Lecture by Seymour Cray. Okay, I'll leave a link to that before we're over. 3M fluorinert. Okay, let's mute the sound on these boring videos. Okay, so FC40, $5,000 for that size of a jug. It used to be like $120 for a 20-ounce bottle. Maybe I'm looking at the wrong page. Maybe there's different grades. Oh, you get a drum of this shit. What does it cost to deliver that? 2 liters. Let's go with 2 liters. 11 pounds, 2 liters. Wait, what? I'm doing this wrong. 2 matching products. Let's go with the 0.75 liter. Okay, it doesn't tell you anything, but it's got a spec sheet. It's got all this technical data you can look at. But let's see if we can get like 20 OZs. Okay, see, now we're getting to a normal... I have a little worry that this product is not 3M fluorinert. Whatever it is, I don't think it's fluorinert. I think it's a knockoff. Oh, propylene glycol. It says it right there, which, I mean, has its uses, but it's not fluorinert, is it? Here we are. Buy 3M fluorinert. Go to prices. I don't need an explanation. Go to prices. 120 cc's. 250 cc. What is that? How many anythings is that? I don't know if this stuff went up in price because of inflation, but 25 cubic meters. Oh my goodness, Google, come on. Give it to me in a cup. 0.8 cups. Okay, so for just under a cup, you could spend $400. I feel like this is way, like higher than I remember it selling for. But that's all right. What is this guy saying? DCTO laser tubes, Deca blah blah, dental instruments, blah blah blah, something pulse, AccuPulse. However, that would be extremely wasteful and expensive because electronic liquids evaporate and also have a 3-year shelf life from the date of manufacture. For this reason, we provide electronic liquid coolant in smaller packaged amounts. You can choose typical repackaged quantities needed for your laser tube or HV blah blah high voltage power supply. Electronic liquids are inert coolants for electronic and high voltage applications. So interesting solution, but obviously way too restrictive, expensive to put that, to immerse an entire computer in it. I guess it's easy to clean off, but I'm not really sure, but it's all pretty interesting. Now, this is the lecture from Seymour Cray. I'll drop a link. He talks about the Cray 3 supercomputer and pretty much his whole background and his whole history. What's up, Admiral T? We got Admiral on deck. Admiral Teague. I need gallium to make transistors. Now, real quick, I believe somebody, was it Stephanie or someone else mentioned they had a liquid cooler of some kind that I was going to Google. AIO. Here we are. Tricks to blah blah AIO. About a cup. Yeah. About a Stanley Cup. Isn't that disgusting, Stanley's Cup? Why do people want to, win Stanley's Cup? Sounds really nasty. Okay. Gutter jokes out. Okay, so the thing I like and don't like about this design is that it's got this. What is this? Is that a temperature readout? Is that like built into the... It's actually kind of cool if that's what's going on there. I don't know if it's practical. Is there an LCD built into this? Or an OLED display? What the heck is going on here? I'm not knocking it. It's just something else there. I guess if you have a big old glass window on the side of your computer case, sort of like the transparent ones we saw before, this would look pretty cool. And as long as it's like taking care of the fundamentals that you want it to take care of, like, moving liquid in a loop and cooling it down, then, I have no objection. The only issue I would say is that for the price, you're definitely paying for the style. You're not paying for the cooling capacity. It's like that doesn't appear to be like, look, if that's as big of a radiator you're going to fit in your computer anyway, then you're good to go, right? If you think you're going to need a larger radiator and you have room to accommodate one, then, you might be able to pay about the same price or less for a larger radiator, for example. But it's an exotic design, all right. And this one looks like it's taking it to another level here. Like, what is going on here? There's a fan inside of here. Presumably, there's got to be a pump. That must be the pump. Okay, so that's the water block and pump. I believe, if I'm looking at this correctly. This is circulating the fluid over the copper plate or whatever. And this just has additional air cooling on it for some reason. Perhaps to provide like a preliminary stage of air cooling and perhaps to prevent you from accidentally cooking the LCD, I guess. Very interesting design there, I gotta say. And this is 8th gen solution, so I can't speak for how this would work on a 14th gen or anything like that. But that's pretty cool. Any questions before we proceed further? Cool, man. Luke. So you're looking for a way to negate the heat exchange as much as possible. Yeah, kind of, I know the liquid's going to end up, and the heat's going to end up in the environment, but I think it's going to provide enough of a buffer that the air conditioner can keep up. So I'm actually going to be, by this design, we are dumping an extra 150 watts of heat into the room. And if this allows us to sustain 5 gigahertz turbo continuously, where the computer is consuming 200 watts or more, that heat has to go somewhere. But if it's going in the liquid and the chiller is taking care of it and the water is buffering it, right? And I have an air conditioner running, or if I turn off the computer for bedtime and I run the air conditioner, I think everything will kind of work itself out. I believe the chiller would have like a thermostat that I can set on it, for example, so there's options. I do have some concerns about managing like water coming out, but if anything, I could potentially run a dry vent to the attic, and I can like literally have the top of the aquarium. I could have something drawing air from the top of the aquarium and bringing it to the attic if I absolutely had a problem with humidity buildup. Although I think I'd probably do something even more crazier. I would just seal the lid of the aquarium to trap the moisture in, perhaps. Because it's the chiller that's going to be circulating the heat. I don't care. I don't really need the water to evaporate. If anything, I'd rather the water stay in the aquarium. Because one thing I've learned while having, my beloved turtles like Puffy over here is that I get a lot of evaporation from this tank over here. I have to, especially in the summer, I have to constantly replenish the water as it evaporates. It's got more surface area. The room gets pretty warm. I have a server in that room. And it's just, it's summer, and the filter is going to, heat up a bit. The water that the filter circulates helps to cool down the filter, like Pop Culture Mechanic was sort of mentioning with relation to the heat exchangers for the fluid pumps for the hydraulics or whatever. And the grease, the oil circulation thingamajig. So same thing could happen if I'm intentionally using a tank that is a third of the size. This is a 150-gallon stock tank. If I do that with a 50-gallon tank, I'm going to have the same problem, even if the surface area is reduced. Now I'm pumping heat into it. So, like that's going to cause evaporation. But we can mitigate that. But by mitigating that, that's going to prevent it from acting as a passive cooling unit, right? But that's why we would ultimately introduce a fan, which means it can't be sealed if we have a fan on there, right? Or why we would introduce a chiller, so that then we could indeed seal it. Yeah, well, here's the thing. So I looked into something like that, and one method was to literally hook refrigerant loops up to the water block, or to use something other than a water block and use refrigerant. The problem with that was it had a very beefy, like insulated, cord, or the inflowing and outgoing tubes were wrapped in like this much stuff. Like it was the size of a soda can, which I got a funny story about that. But anyway, size of a soda can. And the holes in the back of my case are only, I'm in trouble. No, I'm kidding. But jokes aside, the holes in the back of my computer case are about the size of this bottle. Man, people got me wrapped up sensitive today. I'm afraid I'll put my hand in the wrong shape and then I'm going to get a screenshot taken of me. And then people are going to be like, this guy went like this. But in all seriousness, it's about that big. As you can see, this bottle of airbrush paint could fit in it. So we use this. But you can see how big my hand is. The holes in the back of my case are maybe about the size of the inner diameter of this. Give or take a little bit, maybe a little bit larger. And I have these rubber grommets on there. So the rubber grommets look like little triangles pointing inward. So that as you slide the tube in there, it creates like enough of a seal that you don't disrupt the airflow, or that bugs don't fly inside your computer. If you get like a bug, let's say like you get like a swarm of flies in the house, they're not going to just fly into that opening, And so I have the openings, the ports for an external radiator. So I figure, okay, we could just hook that up to like, essentially we'll have a water block, 2 tubes coming out the back of the computer. We'll have some kind of compression fitting or maybe screw-on fitting. I don't know. I'll have to investigate that part. And you could attach it like that. Now, I was going to go through the trouble of going on Amazon and picking parts and ordering them, but I'm going to do that at my own time. But I'll just show you how the conversation went with the artificial intelligence. Yeah, that's pretty interesting looking. I'll say that. But like I said, all my all my other statements still stand. I think it looks cool as heck. It's just a matter of deciding, like, will this provide the cooling that I want? And if you need more cooling, believe me, you could pay less money to get more cooling capacity. But that being said, that looks so cool. It does. Hey, that would work. A mini split system. That's also crossed my mind. But yeah, it's an interesting idea too. So anyway, the issue with the I didn't finish the point. I'm sorry. So number one, the insulated tubing that would go to the water block would be this big. I'd have to make a different design. I'd have to cut a hole in the back of my case. I'd have to find a way to route it. I have a couple of cool ideas how I could do that actually without modding things too heavily, but it seemed like already a pain in the ass, because the reason you're doing that is because of the condensation. when you cool down the refrigerant lines to that degree, you're going to get a lot of condensation there. And here's the other issue. If I have that water block or that refrigerant block attached to my CPU and my, my computer turns off, maybe there's a power outage. Maybe the power turns off, it turns back on, the computer stays off for some unknown reason, and now you got the refrigerant continuing to cool down the CPU. Now you got condensation and frost forming on your motherboard. It's just nothing good can come of that. Now, that said, maybe there would be a temperature sensor or thermostat that would prevent that, right? But it just seemed like too cumbersome for me to be comfortable with. I'm more comfortable of just having a simple pair of tubes coming out the back of my computer, because then I can hook that up to a more conventional radiator. So if I need to move the computer to a different room, I can still attach a conventional radiator to it. My options are not limited. But at the same time, if I run the tubes into a fish tank with copper pipes zigzagging through it, that will do the trick in my, based on my research. And we'll see what that artificial intelligence tool has said. Yeah, I was wondering if the aquarium was sealed to negate the loss of water through evaporation. Would it help? Well, it would help prevent the evaporation. It wouldn't promote cooling, but that wouldn't be a problem with the chiller being involved. Also, even if the aquarium was sealed, it would eventually passively cool down. The glass itself will conduct heat. So, we got those bases covered too. That's definitely an option. Hey, what's up, awesome one? Whatever boats you afloat, so cruise. That's funny. So, yeah. Placing a MOVA 4.3 filled room temperature, okay, could lead to extremely efficient passive cooling under the right conditions. Let's break down how this would work, potential benefits and limitations. Okay, so how it would work. Increased heat transfer. Water has a higher thermal conductivity than air, meaning heat dissipates more efficiently. Passive heat dissipation. A large volume of water, 50 gallons, acts as a thermal buffer, keeping temperature stable. So it's like literally what I had in mind. Slow heat buildup. The water itself acts as a heat sink, meaning it will take a long time to reach equilibrium with your heat input. Theoretical cooling performance. Water has about 24 times the thermal conductivity of air, meaning heat will transfer away from the radiator more efficiently than if it was simply air cooled. A 50-gallon tank. So right off the bat, liquid cooling is already advantageous without doing something exotic like this. But it is, something that I'm still concerned about dumping heat into my environment, and that's why I'm looking for an exotic solution. And I'm so glad Stone Loki is here, because Stone Loki has a fire liquid cooling setup in his system, host named Sparta. And Sparta has a dope liquid cooling system, and I know he does maintenance every year. In fact, I referenced that earlier when I mentioned that, Chaos was mentioning some issue and concern about his cooling system, and I said, well, have you changed your liquid? He might have a all-in-one cooler, but if not, he may be overdue for a coolant exchange, or whatever they call it. Stay away from the thermo tank. 4 tank failures in 2 years cost me close to $400 for each replacement. Hoorah, you got me there. Well, Stone Loki, I got news for you, my friend. I'm so excited to share this with you, because fancy your eyes on this diagram. Okay, so this is the plan. We're going to put a water block inside my case, right, on top of the i9 9900K. And we're going to have flexible tubing coming out the back. But in this picture, you're going to see a copper pipe. So ultimately, we're going to have flexible tubing terminating and connecting to a copper pipe. And this copper pipe is going to be 10 to 20 feet long, probably 1/2 inch out of diameter, one of those. I think 1/2 inch out of diameter. And it's going to go into a 50-gallon aquarium. And this isn't the exact design, but you see there's a zigzag, or maybe we'll have a spiral or something like that. And that 50-gallon aquarium is going to be filled with, room temperature water. So as the water block heats up the water, it's going to go into the aquarium. The pipes are going to be immersed in water. The water is going to absorb the heat. Then the nicely cooled water is going to go back into the computer and repeat the process. Now, of course, I'd imagine the liquid doesn't have, the water in the tank doesn't have an unlimited capacity for heat, but it can act as a thermal buffer, as our AI friend just told us. So then from there, we can either use a fan to cool the top of the tank in the short term, if that's even a concern. But ultimately, I would be getting an aquarium chiller where it can circulate water out. It can cool it down using the same refrigerant system as a refrigerator. Literally, it's the same principle as a refrigerator, using some kind of, refrigerant like Freon, and then it's going to pump cold air back into the tank. So I'm pretty confident about this, allowing me to maintain higher turbo clocks during the summer months, because my main issue is and concern is that my only regret is not overclocking my CPU in January, where I could have left the window open for like a couple of hours, let 20-degree air fill up this room, and then see how that performs, But no big deal, because ultimately now we're moving into a nicer season. So, yeah, that's basically how that works. And, oh, wow, okay, so Stone Loki changes his water every 6 months. Oh, thank you for sharing that. Hey, what's up, Hills of Silence? Good to see you, bud. Hope you're having a wonderful night. I'm having a great night. As you can see, we're doing some mad scientist work right over here. I think it was a made-up problem and stupid, but whatever. Which problem? Oh, yeah, I got you. Well, it's a cool made-up problem. About a decade ago, I built a fish tank PC. Yo, those are cool, too. You didn't, by any chance, immerse the components in distilled water. We were talking about that a few minutes ago, and the pros and cons or potential risks of immersing the parts in, distilled water even. Or mineral oil for that matter. Hello, the Peter Venkman fan site. How do you do? Ah, so you keep that from becoming a mosquito nest. Oh, yeah. How, I'm sorry, I misread that. Ah, so you sound like you caught me here. You caught me, huh? Okay. Uh-oh. Or someone may have shot a hole in our machinations here, guys. So how do you keep that from becoming a mosquito nest? I don't. The sanctity of life dictates that all creatures are beautiful and mosquitoes are no exception. Okay, jokes aside, by putting a cover on it and putting biocide, actually, in all seriousness, mixing biocide that is so cool. Oh, man. Pixar, it didn't happen. I'm kidding, but I believe you, and that's cool. That's super cool, Stone Loki. But yeah, so that's the answer to your question, though, awesome one, is basically we got to buy a biocide. Because that's the thing. So the AI assistant was telling me, and by the time we get past all the preliminary stuff and yada, 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 I ask it about the water. So it says you should use distilled water. Okay, so where did I put distilled water with biocide and corrosion inhibitors? Here we are. So up here, the thing was like, oh, you need to use distilled water. And I'm like, hell no. Well, I misspelled well. I know you don't put an apostrophe in well. I spelled it right. We'll be using NYC tap water. It is among the best tap water in the continental United States, and it's way cheaper than distilled water. Can we mix quality tap water with the biocide if necessary? And the AI was like, yeah, sure. So that's the plan. And it was giving me some back and forth concerns, but like mainly it was about algae, bacteria, biofilm. But mosquitoes, that's one of them there, awesome one, because, logically, they like warm water, I guess, right? Who knows, maybe get some mutant mosquitoes that way, right? Best way to prepare New York tap water. Preheat the water before adding it to your loop. Let it sit 24 hours in an open bucket to let the chlorine evaporate. Alternately boil it for 10 minutes and let it cool to remove chlorine faster. If you have a Brita Zero water or any activated carbon filter, use it to remove excess chlorine and minerals. This is a good idea, but not strictly necessary since biocide will take care of the bacteria. Add anti-corrosion and biocide additives. EKWB, cryofuel, Mayhem's inhibitor, etc. to prevent corrosion. Now, believe it or not, if I get a copper, I don't know if they make copper water blocks per se, but I hear one of the concerns that come up is galvanic corrosion, where you have like copper and aluminum making contact with one another, and essentially when you have differing metals making contact in a watery environment, I don't know if that means salt water or fresh water, but essentially it creates corrosion. Sort of like you'll get a little bit of electrical current from that, and that creates a galvanic corrosion. So presumably if I'm going copper to copper or plastic tube to copper, it might not be a problem. Tub cooler. Yeah, basically. 50 gallons is 400 pounds of water. Yep, I'm okay with that. Oh, okay. I knew you were going to say that. You know why? Because when I first had the 50-gallon fish tank for the turtles, or one turtle in the 50-gallon tank, I was really concerned about the weight of the tank, but basically, like, that's about as high as I'm comfortable with putting on a second floor. But you could probably push 70 gallons, of course, in terms of the weight. But that being said, that would take a long time to heat or cool that water. Oh, I see what you're saying, James. So you're saying, yeah, essentially based on the amount of water we're talking about by the gallon and the weight of that water. So yeah, that's why I know why I believe that I could safely do a passively cooled solution in the short term, if not for a pretty significant chunk of time. DJ is a future California governor with that answer. I don't know if I should be flattered or offended. Put dragonfly larvae into there instead. Oh yeah, okay, now I remember. Yes, that is a very future California governor answer there, awesome one. Dragonfly larvae. Oh, okay. I was gonna say dragonfly. I was like, that's an interesting. That sounds like a really exotic creature right there. Like I do not want to be bitten by dragonfly. That sounds highly infectious. Can't spell, I guess. Yeah, I'm sure it's called autocorrect, more like auto incorrect. My grandparents' water in New York is either soft or hard and tastes like sulfur. Well, they are probably in upstate New York. Or in a building with a wooden tank on the roof. Nah, I don't know, I'm making that up. But seriously, I know like not all of New York State has the water that New York City has. We have like a special deal with like the Catskill watershed people, whoever has the reservoir upstate. I think this was arranged in the 1940s or some crazy shit. Like, if you ever seen the movie Die Hard 3, Die Hard with a Vengeance, that scene where he's driving a truck in a tunnel, that's basically the aqueduct. The answer about mosquitoes first. I did answer the question already. And it was fun to answer that question. So let's see here. Anti-corrosion, blah, blah, blah. Final recommendation is tap water additives equal fine. Should I consider lining the inside of the aquarium to prevent soaking into the silicone corners? Here's the problem I thought about. If I ever need to use that tank for the turtles, let's say one day like my 50-gallon tank has a problem or I have to do a major cleaning and I need to move one or both turtles, most likely just one turtle into like the 50-gallon tank. My concern is that the silicone that you have along the corners might absorb some of the biocide or something unwanted that could be harmful to life forms. The good news is you can either put tape on there, like a rubber, like almost like a rubber masking tape, or there's a spray called Plastishield or Plaster. I'll tell you what it's called right now because I put it in my shopping cart. Plastidip. Yeah, so Plastidip is like a spray on stuff. In fact, people use this on their cars, and you can do some wild stuff with Plastidip on a car. It's like basically like you could use it to make a car wrap. So essentially, you could do a DIY paint job in theory. The quality, your mileage may vary, but in theory, you could spray varying colors of this stuff, make little stencils out of masking tape and put it on your car and have like some pretty slick looking stuff. And then when you're done with it, it peels right off. So if you're bored with the paint job or you want to apply a new one, but also it's cool because it's like a rubbery or latex like material that, acts as a shield. So in my case, I'm going to use something like this to just cover up the corners of the aquarium to help protect those from like the liquid. And then if I ever need to use the tank for something that is alive, I could peel this stuff off the corners where the silicone caulking is, and that would potentially allow me to resume normal operation if I stopped using this in the manner that we intend on using this aquarium. Now, where did I put my conversation with the chat GPT? Here we are. Like fish before houses, basically. Yes, seriously, man, right? That is a very California gubernatorial thing to say. The turtles will become the cooler and morph into TMNT. Not sure if that works like that, but what it might do is accelerate their metabolism, and this could have a twofold issue. It could make them grow more rapidly to a point, but it may also accelerate their life processes so that they don't live as long. And the fact that my turtles don't hibernate already potentially shortens their lifespan, but attempting to, hibernate turtles in a unnatural environment, in an artificially created environment, or putting them in a refrigerator, that sometimes is how you kill a turtle. So that's why I don't even bother trying to hibernate my beloved turtles. I kind of let them just go into a slow mode during the winter. heating, I might get a new water heater at some point, but I need to get a good water heater. If anyone knows about aquarium water heaters by next winter, please send me a message or something, or leave me a comment, because I had a good water heater, but the problem was that it cracked at some point and it electrocuted me and my turtles possibly, although they seemed quite fine while I was getting electrocuted. I literally put my hand in the tank and I'm feeling freaked me the F out. And so of course I unplugged everything. I went to the circuit breaker with rubber boots on. And then like I unplugged everything until I could figure out what was broken and what wasn't. And I bought a new filter, even though the filter was not the problem. I bought a new filter. Well, it was sort of related. But anyway, it was a cracked heater. So I had a 200-watt heater by Aqueon. And it was a good, simple water heater. It was. But I found out that what I really needed was a 300-watt heater for my size tank. But once you look at the reviews for the 300-watt heater as opposed to the 200-watt heater that I already possessed, the failure modes that you saw, when something went wrong with the water heater at 300 watts, it went wrong, like dead fish. And I'm like, it's one thing to kill a bunch of fishies, but these are my turtles here. Okay, they're good kids. They don't deserve to be killed. They're too sentient, or compared to fish, they're way more sentient. Beyond that, I can't really attest to any great intelligence going on in their noggin, but they're smarter than fish and they're smarter than snakes. So I guess a snake might be smarter than a fish, and that's a big maybe. And a turtle is definitely smarter than both. But beyond that, you know. Hey, what's up? Feel free to think. There's food grade silicone caulk. Yes, and that's what that's what the tank has already. But my concern is I didn't want to put silicone caulk on top of silicone caulk. I mean, it's really not a necessary thing to even worry about, but I figured, why not? At least I want to at least have the option when I'm ready to execute this. And maybe I want to do this pretty soon. I mean, that's why I'm so excited about it right now. Yeah, that's true too. Probably resistant to absorption or chemicals. So that's another thing. The silicone I have in there right now might already be resistant. It's just that if it's not, I don't know. I'll do my research, find out. Maybe I'll find out it's not even a necessary step, because it's $20 for a can of Plasti Dip. If I don't need to buy it, why waste money on it, right? Unless I have another use for Plasti Dip, why bother? Do 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 do. That's my Mario music. Southerns might choose some Plasti Dip. Southerners, yes, like the tobacco stuff. Fish suck. They also kind of do this. But yeah, I hear you. I mean, they're good food for the turtles. Turtles don't think fish suck. They love eating them. Our water probably depends on the building and side of town. So yeah, anyway, so that was the thing about Plasti Dip. I first suggested lining it, but this mentioned that it would prevent cooling. So I said, what about some kind of spray-on latex type of thing? And it goes, oh yeah, Plasti Dip. So I was like, all right, cool. I got it kind of give me comparisons of different heat sources and how they compare to my computer. There we go. This is the part where we talk about Plasti Dip. Final, here we are. Best temporary coating, and gives us a list of the temporary coatings that could be used, like we just talked about, tape and Plasti Dip. Now, wire AC plus water loop equals smart heat removal. Where did I get to AC? Water cooling moves the heat away from the CPU faster, but still needs to go somewhere. Normally, the heat dissipates into your room, warming it up over time. You can direct some of it or all of the waste heat outside your room, and your room stays cooler. If you vent some of the air-cooled radiator heat out, or pre-cooled intake water using AC air, you're reducing the buildup. Oh yeah, I remember now. I think I remember what happened. You're absolutely correct. Even if you use a more efficient water cooling system, the heat still ends up in the... Wait, here's my question. Plasti Dip sounds sufficiently excellent. Now, before I proceed, I'm in love with this idea, and I feel very comfortable with the planning and execution of it. But it occurred to me that a single dryer vent is a small cost. I was thinking about directing some of my AC's cool air output that maybe add some fans to push and pull. Ah, damn, I mistyped that sentence. That's why the AI misinterpreted me. On one angle, it's basically the same air-cooled CPU's heat just being removed from the CPU at a faster rate. The heat still ends up in the room. And then this thing kind of misinterpreted it, so I think I had to give it a correction. But it had some interesting ideas. I said I did not say anything about doing that. I definitely don't plan on installing an outdoor dry vent, although I haven't ruled out that option completely. I'm okay with, because this is what it was saying. It was saying that put a dry vent over the aquarium and draw some air from the aquarium outside. Now, it's not a terrible idea. You could even do some form of evaporative cooling with that, and that might very well also eliminate the need for a chiller altogether. Now, I think it'd be cool if you could have an aquarium chiller and take the coils off the back and extend them a longer distance and stick the coils outside. That would be cool. But I'm not really prepared to mess with that at this time. I'm okay with the water's ability to buffer heat, and a chiller uses refrigerant that is optimized for the job without excessive waste heat. And it still says, using AC instead of cooling, placing a small fan, keep water at a fixed temperature without excessive heat dumping. So as a temporary solution, I could use a dryer vent blowing on top of the water. But the problem is, once again, I'm concerned that that's going to kick moisture into the room. It's going to be a bit counterproductive, but it might work. I don't know. What do you think, James, or anyone? You guys think if I hook a dryer vent up to the cold air output on my air conditioner, I blow it on top of my aquarium? I mean, it would make the water cold, but I feel like I'm overlooking something. Then again, if the moisture is above the water, that moisture would cool down and it would condense back into the water. So maybe it could keep the room dry. If 200-watt studios sold 200-watt heaters, water heater. If 200-watt studios sold 200-watt water heaters, swim with the fishies. Hey. Oh, yeah, I did something recently that involved swimming with the fishies. What was I doing? What the hell was I doing? I was doing something recently, and I had to make a reference to that. It'll come back to me after the show is over. Candle power. Yeah, candle power is a cool word. I suppose you could put another radiator from the fish tank outdoors. That's another option. Yeah, absolutely. So, cool thing is that some of these ideas, like this idea right here, James, is something I could add on later. So having this 50-gallon tank leaves room for some ad hoc solutions, which I like. But I think I already have a pretty sound design and a pretty sound theory of operation, which excites me a lot. So final plan, water's buffering effect plus chiller will handle heat without venting needed, according to the AI. Not saying that we ruled that out. AC is still useful for keeping the overall room comfortable. Plastic dip keeps the tank future-proof for potential turtle use. So that's kind of optional still, especially if the food-grade silicone isn't going to absorb anything anyway, but I still want to have that option because I really don't know anything about biocide. Like, for all I know, you put the biocide in there, maybe the silicone changes color, and you're like, uh-oh, residue. I'm really concerned about chemical residues and messing up the gut flora of a turtle. This is shaping out to be a brilliant, efficient, and well-planned hybrid cooling setup. Let me know if you need a pump, chiller, or tubing recommendations. I'll give that a like. And I think I did ask for some recommendations. I'm definitely going to revisit this to assist me with the shopping list, which I think it already kind of spat out the basics of it. My CPU can produce 200 to 250 watts of heat, and the only way I'm keeping it cool right now is by capping it, although I may boot into my BIOS tonight and just kind of crank it up a little bit again. But I do distinctly remember yesterday the temperature reaching basically right under the maximum temperature when looking at CPU-Z core temp. That's core temp. Core temp looks like this normally, but when you double click it, it hides a lot of the useless info. It's basically the most important info in here is temperatures of your 8 cores, their max and minimum temperature, their utilization or load. Now the power figures here are a little confusing. It's got the wattage listed twice and then 2 more times, and I don't really understand that, and I couldn't get a straight answer from the documentation, Google, or any AI assistant on why that is. So I don't know if it's 37 watts times 2, or is it just disregard the second number and call it a day? I honestly don't know. I'm going to guess it's this number plus this number, but I'm not really sure. I do have a power meter hooked up to the back of my computer, so I can check that next time I'm doing a stress test. Buy the smallest industrial chiller. Those go outside. Problem solved. Yeah, but then I have to run tubes through the wall, James. I mean, I like it, though, but I'm just... Oof. Let's see what this looks like. Industrial chiller. Small. That's what she said. Okay, I'm sorry, that's corny. Yeah, because I mean, it's got the basic design is all there, right? You got your compressor, you got something to hook something up to, apparently. I'm really not crazy about diving into refrigerant stuff first, but after I get the basic setup done, this doesn't look as complicated as I thought. Now, this part's kind of weird. Like, what do you do with this part here? Do you run a pipe through it? Do you circulate water through this, like, circular frosty bit? I guess you could do that. I wonder how people utilize a piece of equipment like that. I know that's not necessarily an industrial piece of kit. Just, it jumped out at me. That's why I'm looking at it. And here's actually a valid example. See this one here, unlike the AliExpress version, like you actually have like foam insulation all over this thing, right? That's what you're supposed to be doing with this. At least from what I can figure. That might be dealing with the heat or the cold. Where is the cold side of that? Well, anyway, let's worry about that later. Then also add a still and become an alcohol baron. That's a good one. Awesome one. You can mod a countertop water distiller for shine distillation. Moonshine. I think just a microcontroller and tweak the temperatures a bit. I always wanted to try a tabletop distiller, but after realizing how inefficient they are electrically, I'd rather just get a kettle, hook a copper pipe up to it. I just haven't gotten around to doing it, and just boiling water from one side into another container and calling it a day. One of these days. And Curtis YZ Reacts says, "Sup, awesome one. And what's up, some person? It's good to see you, man. Hope you're having a wonderful evening. What do we need to know about moonshine? Well, number one, that you don't know anything after you ingest moonshine. Rule number 1 of moonshine. I think the pot is for water. No, the pot is for getting stoned. Oh, you're talking about water pots. Hi, some person, says James. That was a funny joke. Anyway, I crack myself up sometimes. But, we're getting varying types of chilling devices here. Now, I'm not immediately prepared to hang anything out the window, but it's definitely something that I don't mind learning about in order to keep... Okay, I love when you click on a shopping site like this in Google and it relays you to their front page. It's like, dude, I'm looking at the product. So let's see if I can understand what's going on in this design. 80 watts? Oh, what? Oh, this is for cooling a laser tube. So this may not at all be for what I'm trying to do. Okay, it's got gallons of water inside. Let's look up an aquarium chiller, because that's something that I'm a lot more comfortable with and I'm already partially familiar with. So hang on. We're going to get some aquarium chillers. Now, some of these are terrible. Like this one says high efficiency 180 watt chiller. No, this is bullshit. This is not a high efficiency chiller. I can already see what the Foxtrot is going on here. That is a thermoelectric cooler. You can see it in the freaking picture. Basically, yes, the blue side under this white slab or above this white slab can get extremely cold. That is true. Like I'm talking, you could turn air into condensation in like 5 seconds, and in under 5 seconds time after that, that condensation turns into ice. But the other side of this thing dumps more heat than any CPU cooler. And if you're going to be taking heat from a CPU, putting it through this water block and sucking the heat out of it using this technology, the hot side of this is going to get obscenely hot. This is not efficient at all. Unless you stick the heat sink outside on a winter day, then yes, it might prove efficient under those conditions. But absolutely dastardly. Now, let's go and look at something, a site that sells normal stuff. I mean, I would do Amazon, but we're going to go with Lowe's right now because Lowe's is a high point. Hi-yo. All right. See, look, it's going to go back to the homepage again. Watch what Google does. I love when it does. See, it's back at the homepage. So I guess what you got to do is you got to open the same thing twice. I'm sure that's not a me problem. Because I have it happen to me everywhere. When I'm at work, when I'm here, it's not. So this is kind of like what I have in mind. And this I'm entirely comfortable with, especially if it works the way I think it works. So this one apparently has a pump included with it, but I'm okay with supplying my own pump if I need to. Now, this could still work on the same principle as the inefficient one. So I'd be interested in seeing if there's anything about this that indicates if it's thermoelectrically based. Because thermoelectrics are no bueno, no bueno. So we need to get like maybe the product information here will tell us how this device operates. Stable water temperature, blah, blah, blah. Like an air conditioner for fish tanks. It is an important piece of equipment, blah, blah, blah. Creates these temperatures. Energy saving compressors. Okay, good. There's a compressor in there. That means this is a refrigerator, basically. This is exactly kind of what I have in mind here. This is pretty much what I have in mind. Now, horsepower, how much water, I don't know, but the price, a little pricey, but if it gets the job done, it's not bad. And what's beautiful about this is I don't even need to buy it immediately. So I have time. I can buffer my costs a little bit, just like how the water is buffering the heat. I could buffer my procurement of this, and that gives me time to learn more about how these work. And it also gives people like James an opportunity to talk me out of using this. But jokes aside, though, I mean, even when I go this route, nothing's off the table. It's just a matter of like practicality. Like, what can I hang from my window and yada yada? And do I really want to mess with it? Is it going to be something that I'm going to embark on and not finish? So everything that I do, that I commit to, is stuff that I know I can commit to, basically. Whereas if I half-ass it, you get to halfway done building it and then just kind of be lingering. I'm not trying to do that, right? And plus, I really want to be able to throttle this CPU up and see how cool we can get it. I want to see how hot the water gets. I'm very interested in just doing the science on this to see what happens, And if I find out the water can't absorb enough heat, I'm tossing ice cubes in there, bro. Nuka Shine. I like Nuka Shine. Oh, yeah. So we got a Fallout fan here. Speaking of Fallout and Nuka-Cola, I think Stark of Iron, Tony Stark, is streaming right now, or will be continuing to. We're going to have a couple of people we can raid tonight. The choice is up to you guys whom you want to raid. I'm not picky. I have a lot of friends on YouTube who I like, and I don't like picking favorites. Yeah, Ronnie has a basement. Just relocate the computer there and remote into it. No. And here's why. I mean, obviously, I do pretty well with remote access, but the whole point of having the computer here is to have the most local access. Now, interestingly, James, that solution isn't actually far off what I've already done. So during a hot summer day, like last summer and the summer before, how I would do this is I would hook my Steam Deck up to my plasma TV in the turtle room, and I would use remote play. And essentially, that would allow me to stream my Steam library to the deck, hooked up to a gamepad of my choice, typically this one, as a matter of fact, along with Rumble feature, the vibrating gamepad. And it's nice. It is, it works. And the cool thing is my plasma is 720p, which might sound disadvantageous, but it actually just gives me better performance and better cooling performance. So the consequence of 720p is that everything's hooked up to a gigabit connection. So the Steam Deck is hooked up to a gigabit connection. My PC is hooked up to a gigabit connection. But the idea is that now I'm in a different room than my PC. My PC can dump as much heat into the room as it wants because I'm not in here playing the game. But by running the game at 720p and streaming it, now maybe the computer produces less heat. Or maybe by running at 720p, I can crank up the graphics settings to be that much higher. You know what I mean? Get better, whatever the hell they call it. All of those textures and the reflection detail, the quality of the water, all of that exotic stuff. So it's not a solution that is beyond me. It's actually a solution I have pursued. But to do the reverse of that, I'm opposed to. Now, actually, you're not far off, James. When I think about it now, I'm reflecting. I do have plans on sticking a thin client next to my IBM PC AT because I do have a space near my 3D printer where I could put my laptop and like, one of those USB hub splitter thingamajigs. But, I may just build a thin client for that desk or use my laptop. But either which way, if I use my laptop, I'm still going to have a monitor there, maybe 2 monitors, split my display output on those, so to speak, or, output it to at least 1 or 2 external monitors. And then, yeah, absolutely, I could remote into this computer and use the more powerful resources. But that being said, something rubs me about it in a way that I'm not crazy about. But the truth is that on a gigabit connection, I have not had any problems doing it. Even if I'm playing a game on my Steam Deck remotely at my friend's house, and I'm here, we both have Fios, so our upstream and downstreams are pretty much nearly identical. I had great results even over Wi-Fi doing that, And even in my own house, yeah, I could do it over Wi-Fi. It's been pretty surprisingly fine. But, like, I still like having my workstation here. Remember, I'm streaming here. This is the real challenge. I'm thinking out loud in response to your message, James, because it's kind of getting the, creative juices flowing. And as I think about it and I think about it out loud, what the biggest issue with, going like, remote, so to speak, or the part that I'm apprehensive about is streaming. Everything else I can do remotely. When I'm at work on my lunch break, I can log into my PC on my phone. Just the other day, I was like writing scripts or updating scripts and running video encoding batch jobs, like, and setting them up on my phone while on the bus, so there's things I use it for. I use my laptop, I log in remotely. When I need to do AI image upscaling using that upscaling app, it takes like 10 minutes to do it on my laptop. It takes like 1 minute to do it on my desktop. So there's definitely scenarios where I log in remotely, but when I'm at home, I definitely like the benefit and the perk of having all my monitors in front of me. I think that to use multiple monitors on a remote computer with Parsec, you got to pay for the paid edition of Parsec Warp, if I remember correctly. But that's not necessarily a game changer or a deal breaker on its own. Like, I could still cycle or switch between the multiple monitors. But mainly just, like, I really am not comfortable routing the microphones and all of that crap through the Parsec and back up and down. Like, I do like the idea of maybe doing it eventually for, other reasons, but not necessarily as a primary or everyday driver. But I do appreciate you spitballing ideas. Maybe a water cooler with a waterfall. Great idea. Actually, that did cross my mind. Were you here when I show you the Cray supercomputer waterfall? Here, I'll show you. Waterfall. I got a real treat for you. This Reddit post was archived. This Reddit post was removed by the moderators. Fucking losers. Fucking Reddit moderators. I mean, I'm one. I literally have I'm the moderator of r/Plasma TV. It is true. Okay, we're back to the same Reddit link. I fucking hate Reddit. Okay, I don't hate Reddit, but I hate things about Reddit. Now, actually, there's a very telling picture I'll show you in a second here, too. Because there is an interesting detail. I think our best bet is to pull up the video of the waterfall in operation. But here's, okay. So that's the Cray supercomputer. Essentially, that's an external CPU that used to be immersed in fluorinert, fluid. And then that water gets pumped under the floor, so to speak, right? And it goes through this. And this is the waterfall here. So we're going to pull up the NASA video right now because that's where we saw it. Now, interestingly, if you look at this picture here, it looks yellow now. I don't know if that's the liquid, if it evaporated, if it just turns bad after years of use, if it gets exposed to UV light, is that what makes it look yellow? Or if something else happened, like if it's just like from, once again, years of use. So it's either the UV lights, because fluorescent lights do emit a lot of UV, or it's a residue from the liquid. But that is a suspicious, shade of yellow on that, right? So now, real quick, okay, we're going to get this. I'm going to bookmark that. I'm going to say notify me. So we got this guy, and Stalk of Iron is still streaming. I don't see Chaos streaming yet. So now, it's too bad LCX didn't tune in. I was going to ask if I could play her song at the end of the show. But anyway, cool songs, you should check out her channel. Anyway, what the hell was I going to type here? Cray 2 supercomputer NASA. You ever hear people call NASA Nassau? Like it's Long Island, they're like Nassau. I'm like, not Long Island. It's NASA, not Nassau County. Anyway, okay. Sorry, I'm going to be dumb. All right. You're going to go repeat this part because it's cool. So there's your supercomputer. Let us see. Now, you got a lot of old school disk pack units back here, by the way. These are like the size of washing machines or laundry machines. And you open up the lid and like, it's almost like the end of an era for this technology here. Because it's the early 90s or mid 80s. So yeah, mid 80s, this technology would still be in use, but not for long, luckily. Like we started having normal hard drives. But NASA still had a lot of these disk packs that you could remove. Anyway, that's a whole other animal. Okay, there's your, twisted pair cabling, basically, running along the inner diameter. Oh, goodness, I'm way behind on chat. Which is good? Good cooler that's not water. Well, 3M Fluorinert. Earlier in the stream, we looked at a product made by 3M called Fluorinert. So just imagine like fluorine, but it's Fluorinert. And it's inert to electrical, current, for example. It doesn't conduct electricity. Apparently, thermosiphon is also an option. Yeah, because the other solution I recommended was overpriced. Also, we had a list in the AI conversation of various biocides and things like that. So if you look up, like, things like, water additive, biocide, antifreeze, maybe, I don't know. But, like, there's definitely stuff that is standard for the liquid cooling thing. No High Point makes pistols. High Point's cheap and reliable, but funky looking in a bad way. Tokarev's funky looking in a good way. Tee-hee-hee. Oh, cool. LCX is here. Good. Maybe I'll get away with playing a song now. But jokes aside, you don't have to let me play a song. But, I just had that song stuck in my head today, Pixel Dreams, If you want to play a version of that, feel free to recommend a version. But otherwise, I will sing. Actually, I will not sing. That would be like more like a sentence if somebody committed a crime. Their sentence would be like, listen to DJ Ronnie G sing. Reliable is important for a pistol or liquid nitrogen. Yeah, so we ruled that out when I ruled out running refrigerant pumps. Oh, L, while you're here, did you see my picture? See, L is a real artist, so I have to show my picture. Yeah, so this is my liquid cooling design. I'm very excited about it. As you can see here in the diagram, this is my computer. And the back has ports where I can run tubing. So I'm going to connect the tubing to copper pipe. The hot water that's circulating through the water block on the CPU will go into my 50-gallon unused aquarium. That used to be the home for my friend Puffy. Yeah, Puffy used to live there. And we're going to just let the water absorb the heat. And then we're going to circulate the cooled, the water in the pipe back into the computer to repeat the cycle. The water itself will have a pretty good capacity for heat absorption, but if it becomes a problem, I can put a fan on it. I can even hook up an aquarium chiller. An aquarium chiller works like a refrigerator, so it's pretty efficient at what it does. And that is my solution for cooling my computer down during the summer while I occupy the room with the computer in it. Because I learned, like, recently when I overclocked it, as I've been explaining in the stream, yeah, overclocking, there's no way you're going to run it at those speeds or sustain any of those speeds in the summertime. This might give me a hope of doing that, but even if not, I'm hoping that it just helps to kind of like allow the air conditioning to catch up so that the room remains at a sane temperature on like 100-degree day. Oh, did I mute? I did mute. Okay. Well, let's see. What else is the chat saying? Oh, yeah. So we're going to look at that picture. I'll play the video for everybody. And I'm sorry. I was going to show you the waterfall. Here's the waterfall coming right up for whoever asked for it. My friends tended to have stovepipe jams often. Okay, that's the whole topic there. Just play it. Cool. Nah. Please don't. All right. I'm not as good at harmonizing as you are, L. 9mm Tokarevs are typically newer models, but okay, these are things that I'm not familiar with because I live in New York and we're not allowed to exercise our 2A rights. He's no Frank Sinatra. I'm not even going to try to impersonate Sinatra. Does your PC need... No, but yes. So, I know, this is crazy, L. But here's the science of it. Okay, so earlier in the stream, I ran my CPU at, I ran a video encoder. My CPU went to 100%. This was below 180, but last night, even at 3.7 gigahertz capped, it was getting like hot. It was getting like hotter. Now, I think yesterday's heat test might have been thrown off by residual heat, but essentially this CPU can by default go up to 4.7 gigahertz or 4.6. So you start at like base clock 3.6, and if I put it into power saving mode or balanced mode here, I can actually force it to run at like a set number. So over here we got maximum power 99%. So here's what we're gonna do. We're gonna do a stress test here. So I'll show you how hot this gets. In fact, this is a good demonstration for all of us here. So unfortunately, I don't really like the stress test feature in this version of CPU-Z. So we have another version of CPU-Z that I don't like the interface for, but it has a good stress test. So we'll go to bench. I'm going to say stress test multi-threading. And we're going to say, let's do it. Okay, so now my cores should get to 100% right here. And if I want, I can update the speed a little bit quicker. I can hear my fan revving up. Now, you're going to look at the temperatures over here. Now, normally this would go up to 4.6 gigahertz, but I actually capped it. I actually had to I basically went to the same settings where you overclock the CPU, and I limited it until it no longer hit 194 degrees, because it normally shoots straight up to 194 when you put it at full load. This time, for some reason, it is running a little bit more efficiently. And once again, I am surprised about that. This is not the same as what happened last night. Last night, even at this speed, it was like kind of kissing 194, but it would usually only be like 2 cores would hit 194. Max CPU temp is 212, but 212 is like the absolute limit. 194 is when it starts to throttle down. So bottom line is that you can't really sustain 4.7 gigahertz continuously. It usually bobs between 4.7 and 4.6 gigahertz. That's like the big issue, is that you're not getting your money's worth. Right? I pay for a 4.6 gigahertz CPU or 4.7. I want to get that full speed. Now, overclocking always increases that heat output curve, so no surprise there. I bet you my stream is actually getting a little wacky now, so I'm going to hit stop on the thing. This is surprising, actually. I'll be honest, the temperature is surprising, but the only reason that we're not seeing the temperature hit anything that's too hot is because I literally capped the turbo. The turbo is normally 4.6. I can overclock to 4.7, I should say, and I can overclock to 5 gigahertz. And at 5 gigahertz, I could feel the heat lofting off of it. What would happen is at 5 gigahertz, it would immediately force itself back down to 4.8, 4.7 gigahertz. So it could never sustain 5 gigahertz. And if I wanted to, even just for the fun of it, for the sake of experimentation and exploration, that's what I would have to do, is use that immersion cooling method. And my biggest concern, finally, is not so much that my PC needs that much cooling. It's not even that matter that I care about getting the most speed out of it, even though I kind of gave that indication. The most important thing is that it does dump a crap ton of heat into this living space. That is like the big one right there. So if the water can buffer that a little bit and like buy time for the air conditioner to do its job, that would be an improvement over the state of affairs for the last 2 summers. And that concludes my thesis on the question, does your PC need that much cooling? And with that being said, I do want to say hello to Nagato, who has the coolest avatar. I think it's a great avatar. I like the way it looks. And I hope you're having a wonderful evening or morning or whatever time it is, Nagato. Slam some ultra high fractals at it. That'll give it a push. Yeah, well, that's the thing. First time I ran this stress test, I realized that video encoding and de-interlacing video was pushing it, but it wasn't pushing it as hard as the stress test. So that's why I went back to running the stress test. Hey, hello, Nagato. Well, you could, and that's the thing I know. I know that playing games, it does dump a lot of heat into the room. You know, whether it's running at like 100% load or 80% load, it is dumping heat into the room, you know, and streaming, recording, etc. So I can cap the CPU speed. And the biggest issue I encountered was like, I had to go into the overclocking settings to be able to control whether it goes to 3.6 gigahertz or 3.8 gigahertz. And normally I have to lock it to just under 3.6 gigahertz or I have no control at all. It's either like that setting I was looking at before. So this is kind of funny, actually. So we're going to go into this settings menu here. So remember, it says 3.8 gigahertz because I capped it in the overclocking menu. Now we're going to go to balanced mode. Now it's at 3.49 or 3.5. It's approximately, now it's a little bit off the mathematics because of the settings I adjusted, but essentially 99% really means like 3.6 gigahertz minus 1%. And you can see the 99% figure is over here. And if we look at the settings for power saver mode, you'll see that I set it to something obscenely low, 40%. So let's click on power saver mode and see how low it goes. But essentially, this method of controlling the heat output of my computer, whether I go from power saver, balanced, or high performance mode, really only lets me make it below 3.6. I can pick just about any speed below 3.6 gigahertz down to 800 megahertz. But I can't pick any speed above 3.6 gigahertz and below 4.7 or below 5. At that point, it's gonna, the minute you give it that extra 1% from 99% to 100%, it kicks into turbo, which is a hell of a lot more than 1%. So that's why I'm glad I stumbled into the overclocking settings, that they're not just for overclocking, but I can actually use them to like control the max turbo. And that may very well help with the summertime cooling situation, just capping it. But the fish tank, basically the water has such a capacity for water in a 50-gallon aquarium that it takes a long time before any of that heat really gets released. And by the time it does, the air conditioner is already kind of doing its thing. So there's actually like a practical scenario where this may actually do what I need it to do. And if not, well, we had a couple of the insane ideas, like hanging the refrigerant coils for the aquarium chiller out the window. Yeah, it definitely does. James, according to ChatGPT, the Chinese were among the first to make 9mm. Oh my God. I love this side topic. 9mm variant. So it's not likely his is a 9mm for the record. Test it with stilling alcohol in your PC cooler. You know, that's an interesting idea, awesome one. Maybe we could, like, you know, do that, right? Heat up the alcohol, distill it. So you play a game, run a live stream, right? If I can make money running streams, that would be cool, because then I can make money while making alcohol. And then I could have like a little, like, you know, shop. It's like, oh, go to my Teespring to buy a bottle of moonshine. And maybe I'll sell it as like holy water so that they don't take it down. You know, just be like, oh yeah, it's holy water. That tastes like moonshine. That's holy water, but we put moonshine in it to prevent bacteria growth. Okay, I'm done on pistol stuff. It's all good, man. I'm just pulling your leg. Test it with stilling alcohol. Yeah, I read that already. But yeah, so anyway, I am. And it's cold over here. These mountains of Tian Shan or something else. Oh, I got to take a phone call real quick. Hang on. Ah! I dropped my phone down the cliff. Oh, it's the 5th phone this year. That's a corny joke. But anyway, jokes aside, yeah, it's true. You're right. I'm sitting on a cliff. But the problem is, I had to wrap my computer in insulation to keep the moisture out because it's constantly raining up here, man. I'm sitting in this mountain, right? And out of nowhere, I see like a freaking cloud flying over my head. And just when you think the cloud is going to fly over you, a torrent of water just comes flowing out of it. So it is due to this fact that I had to cover my computer in, you know, blankets that I had to steal from a Sherpa who helped me get up here in the mountain. Don't tell him that we need to do this exotic fish tank cooling system. That's my story, and I'm sticking to it. Let's finish this video real quick. Never saw a 7.62 version. Oh, okay. More about arms. All right, let's keep rolling here. So this picture right here I mentioned earlier, you can see bubbles inside its computer because it's completely immersed in non-conductive fluid by 3M. And you see the bubbles all over that picture. And there's the waterfall. Okay, I know somebody mentioned the waterfall like 15 minutes ago. Here's the waterfall. Sherpa Robber! And so I don't know exactly what the waterfall is doing, but theoretically it's aerating the water and maybe just falling down, it's cooling down. Maybe as the water flows down, it goes past a heat exchanger of some kind. Maybe this is after the water goes through a heat exchanger. I'm honestly not sure, but that is the cooling waterfall that the Cray 2 supercomputer utilizes. And I believe we'll get another camera angle of it in a minute. And if not, I'll rewind the tape. Let's see, you got this lovely lady here with her hair in a tight bun, which makes me want to eat a Cinnabon. That's the first Cray supercomputer with the, refrigerant running through it, the Freon. So let's get another picture of the Cray 2. I know it's Cray. That's funny. And yeah, so we took a look at the waterfall earlier, and the big problem with the waterfall was apparently when it's not in use anymore, it turns like piss yellow. Okay, I don't know if that's residue. I didn't really read into it, but yeah, that's what happened to that part there. That was in use around 1986, the year I was born. And you got different variations. This one might be a prototype, or this might be a floor model. I think these units might be part of the cooling system here on the side of the brochure or catalog or whatever it is. They certainly have museum displays of this hardware now. Here's one of them. Is that an operational display? I highly doubt it. Let me see if we can find a nice... that's the Macintosh computer. It looks like a freaking garbage can. Fucking Apple. Apple is so stupid. Like, I really, sometimes despise and think Apple is just sad. It's sad to be an Apple user. Like, in these cases, at least in this scenario, maybe getting their laptop, okay, people might be happy with those, but that, Jesus. Okay, pardon my language. There's the waterfall right there. That almost looks like an operational demo. Did they do that in the Computer History Museum and hook that thing up? That is interesting. Anyway, but you guys get the idea. And, once again, here's the boards that were immersed. So while in the other one they had copper plates, they wanted... One of the things that made this computer smaller than the first Cray supercomputer is the fact that they were able to, increase the density of the components, which means you're concentrating more heat, but you can manage that a couple of ways. And I think also the ICs were smaller, so they probably produced a little less heat too. And it looks like they use pogo pins to kind of connect these to like a sliding pin connection. As you can see, there's little holes here. So I think we're gonna get ready to wrap up, but let's see if I'm missing anything here. I was thinking fatter. Okay, we're still talking about arms. Wait, we're talking about arms or water? I think we're talking about arms. Okay. It's called the Cray 2, yeah. So you had a couple of Cray supercomputers. To give you an example, we have the Cray 2 supercomputer, and I'm going to look up the first supercomputer, Cray supercomputer, and there was a Cray 3 prototype, but it didn't really get legs. So let's get a look at the Cray 1. And yes, Cray does build like newer supercomputers, but they're a little bit different now. They're more like server racks that, have distributive hardware. So right over here, let me see here. Okay, no, that's not it. That's the company. Cray, okay, they do call it the Cray 1 now. So this one's a bit larger. It looks like something you'd stick in a lobby. They have fiberglass panels. When universities were buying them, they would let them pick the color in case, they wanted their team colors on it. Is that a computer-generated image? Is that guy getting... He's like, oh, yeah, here's my number. I'll take your number down. Okay, I'm being dumb. Anyway, but yeah, so once again, same concept. The wires are routed along the center to help reduce the path for the signal to travel. And there's refrigeration pumps, and maybe we can get a transparent picture of it. Let's see if we can get a transparent picture. Transparent Cray 1 super duper computer. Supercomputer, thanks for asking. I know I've seen a transparent picture of one before. Not this one. Not this one, although I'm opening. Ah, here we go. I found a picture. Hopefully it's a high resolution picture. Oh yeah, that's halfway decent. I'll settle for that picture. It's probably low resolution, but you can see in this picture here, they got the power supplies and refrigeration equipment, and you'll sometimes see copper tubing. If you find a higher res picture, you'll see copper tubing in there. And I guess this one might be different. Maybe these are panels parts that are removed, but you can see how the boards are just stacked, and then the refrigerant is kind of, pumped through that. So that's one example. This looks like a unit being built, perhaps, or being serviced. Okay, no, this is a different one. This is a Cray XMP, and that was designed by a Chinese rival to Cray. They had like a philosophy where Seymour Cray and his gentleman who is of Chinese descent would kind of take different paths and run two different teams, and that was like an interesting angle to see like what technology would come out ahead. But they were both kind of designing monolithic CPUs, which is kind of like was rapidly becoming an outdated concept. And this is one that's kind of partially torn apart. Once again, you got your twisted pair copper core, or maybe braided wiring. You got your connections for the pogo connectors there. You guys get the idea. And there's another one. Any questions? Sag. Oh, you used a joke before I could type. I don't even know what joke I used. Sag. I know Ubuntu guy and Ubuntu guy. Ubuntu. Oh yeah, and you Ubuntu and U. Oh yeah, I learned something about vowels recently. Apparently, I just learned this like 2 weeks ago. I'm not even kidding. Apparently, you don't need to use "an" in front of every vowel. If the vowel doesn't make a vowel sound, apparently you don't have to use it. Ooh, you. That is a fact. Anyway, okay, you know what? I'm confusing myself. Don't listen to my grammatical advice. I'll investigate that later. But there was actually an interesting angle. Who uses Ubuntu? He refuses to bake pies or wash windows. Why? I know a Ubuntu guy who says he refuses to bake pies or wash windows. Oh, okay. He doesn't want to mess with Raspberry Pi or wash windows. That kind of makes sense now. 762 by 25 is actually smaller. Okay, it's a different topic. Apple users are indoctrinated into the ecosystem, never questioning the wisdom. It's dystopian. You know, it's like, I try not to be like, because I used to be like the kind who'd like badmouth Apple, and it's like, I'm trying to strike a balance. But no, the truth is, like, they're really fucking shitty, man. Like, I mean, like, there was a time where they built like these nice like MacBooks, like the one I have right here somewhere. I'm not pulling it out. It's under my VCR. And I have another MacBook here. Where is that MacBook? Oh, there it is. Wait, is that it? Yeah. Okay, great laptop. It was a good daily driver for a couple of years there. I got this from an e-waste recycling heap because it had an exploded battery, aka death trap. Lithium batteries are fucking frightening, by the way. And it served me well, you know. But that being said, like when they stopped making these, when they stopped making those, and they started switching to the designs where, you know, you couldn't upgrade the RAM, the SSD would use some slightly exotic connector to throw you a curveball when you tried to upgrade it. When they, you know, like eliminated optical drives, okay, that was understandable. Get a USB drive if you really need one, right? But people were doing interesting things like putting a second serial ATA hard drive or second serial ATA SSD into the CD-ROM slot, basically. So that was kind of interesting. But just mainly, like, if you ever watch, like, I'm sure James knows, if you watch any, like, past Louis Rossman video where he's repairing a MacBook, that'll, like, elucidate a lot of why it's a fucking cult. That being said, I used to joke when I worked in retail that, you know, being a Windows user or being a intentional Windows user is like being in an abusive relationship. Not entirely true, but the joke landed well on Apple users. Good for sales when you're trying to make a sale. That is pretty fascinating ballistic stuff. I was reading about cannons from the turn of the century, the last century, not this one. And a lot of fascinating stuff there, post-Civil War and onward. And the 16-inch cannons that we ended up using in the World Wars. But anyway, you can bake potatoes on those. Why, yes, you can. Cray. Yep. Oh, yeah, that's the joke. Okay, yeah, same page. All right, cool. And let's see here. If it's something that I own, that I have virtually 0% chance of being able to work on myself without having to buy special shite specifically from the company to work on the thing, it basically starting. Yeah, so interestingly, like, Apple got into a drama with the right to repair movement. So there's a guy, my friend read a post. The guy did the repair process. He had to replace a battery or some part, or a screen on his device. So part of the procedure that Apple had to comply with was like to provide you with the tool if it didn't exist. So he had to rent like this tool that weighed like 50 pounds and get it like shipped to him or whatever. And he opens up the box, you get this ridiculously heavy block of aluminum or something. And I guess it's there to kind of like, but I remember when I did phone repair for Apple, it was like, at Best Buy, they did have certain things that would hold the phone down so that you could remove the screen like this and hold it without removing the ribbon cable or something like that. And, some of it was helpful. Some of it just showed how convoluted they made the job. And so they were making it the technician's problem to deal with their bullshit, design, instead of making it more serviceable, instead of like complying with the law by making it more serviceable. They made it just about as unserviceable, but they now trained us on how to go through the pain in the ass procedure, at least in my opinion. But anyway, yeah, so apparently you can rent the tools. There is a procedure for renting out the tools and the things to do the job, but it's still pretty convoluted. It's still quite an amusing farce. Lithium Flower from Ghost in the Shell standalone complex starts playing. Ooh, I gotta finish watching the TV series. I got through season 1, liked it a lot. I think I watched the movie standalone complex. Is that the series or the movie? Well, I enjoyed what I saw of it. My own shop have no reason to buy a product every year because it's designed to break in a year. And that's another thing. So like once you're out of warranty of Apple, you bring it to the Apple store and they're highly motivated. That's why they had the drama with the batteries. But I don't really want to go down that rabbit hole right now. But the iPhone battery drama, that was an interesting debacle, and the result, the remedy of that was pretty amusing too. I got some 1900 FPS 45 ACP. Okay. And let's see here. Exactamundo, Ronnie. Well, he said exactly, but I'm going to say Exactamundo. There's a custom Coogan. Okay. I keep reading this stuff. It's okay. You guys keep conversing amongst yourselves. In a 19... Oh, wait, are we talking about cannons? Similar to... No, we're not. But it's a huge... And you could charge rent. Mm-hmm. The series. Ah, that's standalone complex. Well, either way, I like the series, whatever it's called. I liked it a lot. It was very good. I have it. I'm going to resume watching it one of these days, maybe in the not too distant future. I enjoyed watching that anime years ago when it was on Toonami. Yeah. I want to go surfing with her. So, let's see if we can get, I'm going to play a song for you guys, and we're going to set up a rating party. So I'm just going to get a couple of links organized real quick. So, where the heck is Arvis 218? 218. Now, I'm going to call out a couple of names here. But I'm just going to open up a notepad. We're going to take the bookmark from Arvis. Share. Copy. Paste. Okay. 1, 2. Live. Right now. Now, while I'm promoting Arvis, I will promote Stock of Tony, which is actually Stock of Iron. So, Stock of Iron. And so I'm going to drop Tony's link first and then drop Arvis's link second so that, that's where I'm going. I mean, I'm going to go to both places ultimately, but I'm going to go to Arvis's first because why not? Anyway, now we're going to pull up the song that I was granted authorization to play minutes ago. Now, should I play any particular version? Let's see. Yeah, I think we got like the regular version of Pixel Dreams. I think the harmonized version sounded really good, L, but I guess I'm going to stick with this one here. I'm going to go with this one here. I'm going to go with Pixel Dreams L cover, unless you recommend I go with the robot version. If there's a robot version. Of course, that's a members-only version, so that won't work. But I think it's one of these here. Word. Let's get Arvis's link in there now. So anyway, for anybody watching on the replay, if you have any questions, comments, ideas, or concerns, leave a comment. And, damn it, what was I going to say? I think that's everything. So, yeah, thanks for watching. And for now, before I end the transmission, we're going to play a song. She's a lithium flower about to bloom, smelling lithium now. Dun, dun, dun. There we go. We're going to borrow a song now. Or we can play both versions. I never saw One Piece. Well, that That freaking sucks. We still got to get music. So real quick, it gives me an opportunity to compare versions of Pixel Dreams. And I think the one from today was good. I'm going to see if I can find that one real quick, and then I'll put the audio on. That one was good. That one had, like, good harmonization, yo. And yep, Elle has a new 3-dimensional model. I think I found it. And I'll put the sound on. Uh-oh. Got it! Okay, we're going to fix the sound. We're going to full screen it. And this is going to be the conclusion of our stream today. Thank you for allowing me to use your music. Do you have to raise volume?
Watch me harmonize with soft lights glow, the night is near. Memories play like pixels clear. Side by side we press continue. The highs and lows I'm here with you. Game over, no way, just one more try. Retro stars still shine so bright. Twin tails dancing, colors blending. This is not goodbye, just an ending. So let's save this moment, press it in our hearts. Bit by bit we built this world, our little spark. No matter where the credits roll, you'll find me in a pixel dream where we'll always be free. I forgot the lyrics. River runs, the rain goes on. Boss fights fall with one last song. Through the screens, through time, through space, our journey's drawn in neon grace. Game over, no way, just one more try. Retro stars still shine so bright. Twin tails dancing, colors blending. This is not goodbye, just an ending. One more level, one more day. Stay with me, don't fade away.
It was crooked.
Even when the world resets, you'll know LCX will always glow. One more level, one more day. Stay with me, don't fade away. Even when the world resets, you'll know LCX will always glow. Da 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 da. Da 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 da. Da 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 da.
I look forward to that.
LCX will
I wake up a little early for that.
Arigato dayo.
And he got
I
to
harmonized with myself.
That
I
is
was
pretty.
singing along.
Thank you, Elle, for allowing me to utilize your track. And to the rest of you viewers and everybody hanging out tonight, thank you for hanging out. I hope you learned something new about water cooling, thermal conductivity, or supercomputers, or all of the above. And with that being said, we shall now hereby... Oh, did I put Oris's link? Oh, yeah. So real quick, one more time. Just going to drop some links here. And I got to copy and paste my turtle emojis because if I don't, I won't have them for after the stream. But raid any person you want as long as it's Oris. No, I'm kidding. You get raid either person. You raid both of them. If you have like enough screens, you should raid everybody. And I just posted Oris's link twice. So, yeah. And with that being said, we shall now hereby end transmission. Oh, wait. Did I end transmission? No, I